What is up, RotoGrinders? The start of 3.5 hours nonstop NFL DFS conversation. It starts right now. NFL Week 6. Let's say hello to the chat. What's up, Shaq? Holly, hit that like button. Do subscribe. Turn on those notifications. I just happened to notice Kevin Millar in chat, and just kind of takes me back because Kevin Millar hit a grand slam when he was playing for the Red Sox like 12 years ago, and that was like my first like big like 4-figure win in DFS. Like, oh wow! So thanks for that, Kevin Millar. Appreciate that. I'm sure that's the real Kevin Millar. The real TastefulTides, the real Tim Buell is with us. The real Bobby Gomes, who won a real $1 million playing daily fantasy sports with us as well. Bobby, happy Sunday. We were arguing a little bit of people are always assuming it's my fault why we were late. We're a minute late because we were talking movies. Our apologies. That's what happens sometimes these days. We were talking a little bit of Lord of the Rings stuff, and then you can't just talk about that for 30 seconds. We have to finish our conversation. Bobby, how was week 6 shaking up for you? We have a 10-gamer on DK, 11-gamer on FanDuel, a couple clear and obvious really good games. The value's finally getting squeezed. We're finally at that point where, like, I don't think you're going to love your lineups, even though there's a ton of injuries, but we know how this works. Like DK and FanDuel, they pump those prices up as the season goes on. And the rate they pump the prices up, the salaries up, is not the same rate they drop them. So we're kind of at that point where, do you like anybody that's under 5K? There's a couple guys I'm on the roster, but it's not great. It's not great, Jakes. Bobby, happy Sunday. Happy NFL Sunday. How are we feeling today?
We're feeling good, Dean. We're feeling good. Yeah, pricing's getting tight. I like it, though. I like it. I think we'll definitely hit on some spots that can help us get different from the field. Also, just talking about, like, from a slate overview, running back, super strong today. I don't know if you guys feel the same, but I think there's a lot of strong running backs. Interested to kind of talk it all over and excited to see who you guys are kind of looking at currently.
We'll have this conversation. I like a lot of the good plays. Unfortunately, a lot of the good plays are expensive. We live in the world of a salary cap, so it's like I don't know how to spend up for Lamar. Lamar looks amazing today. Versus Washington. And if not Lamar, like you're getting 4 or 5 TDs, it's going to be, Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry looks spectacular as well. And he's always kind of dangerous, but this is the Derrick Henry spot. If you've ever seen one, a big home favorite against a team, well, I guess you can get him in the air, but on the ground as well. Lamb versus Detroit, that's probably one of the featured games on the board, biggest total on the board, looks spectacular as well. Injuries we're kind of monitoring. Deontay Johnson should be good to go. All of the Indianapolis should be good to go. I think it's not official. Saw a tweet last night. I think Richardson, Pittman, there was rumors that he was going to be out for a couple weeks. It looks like he's probably going to play. Down's going to play as well, so there's possibly some Indy value. It looks like that's gone. Brian Robinson's out for Washington, so maybe we get some Eckler. Is kind of an interesting pivot today. Myers not expected to play for Vegas as well, which is like Trey Tucker. This is like the best receiver under 5K. Do we feel good about that? I don't, but I'm going to play him. We'll see. TastefulTides, Tim, welcome. How are things? What's your overview? Do you agree with the overall thought that pricing is just tighter? It's just tighter because nobody's salary really has dropped. Even the guys, their salaries that should have dropped. Like even Mike Evans is really expensive. I know he's had a couple of good games. He's finally kind of working there. Tank Dell is not cheap, even though he hasn't been spectacular. Several players, there's others that kind of can't come up to the chat. Let us know, I'm sure. But like, it just seems like all the prices do is go up or stay the same, and they rarely go down. And that's kind of the predicament we're at. Do you feel that way, Tim, as far as your lineup? Do you like your lineups today?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a tight pricing week. Definitely a lot of really amazing plays, like you said, but they're pretty hard to get to. Definitely guys like Lamb, like Amon-Ra, like Lamar, like we want to play all those guys, but it's really, really hard to get to more than one of them. I think there is some pretty good value at the wide receiver position. You already mentioned Trey Tucker. Bobby's right, though. Like, running back is absolutely loaded today at different pricing tiers also. So, I mean, it's definitely a pretty tough slate. And there's definitely going to be some pretty substantial concentration of ownership, like amongst like 3 or 4 games. So getting to like maybe some one-off pieces, maybe in some other games, is a good way to maybe take down like a large field GPP.
Yeah, most popular play on this slate is going to be almost definitely Bucky Irving, with the absence of White for Tampa Bay. He's not super cheap, but like, you know, the price looks really, really good. And I think we all think he's pretty good. He's probably better than White. And it looks like the runway is pretty clear for him in the dome there against New Orleans, and pretty decent chance that their defense puts them in some good spots against Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler drawing the start today. 2 rookies making their debut, Rattler and Drake May. Oh, I should ask Bobby about that. Is Bobby super excited? That's why Bobby's in a good mood today. This is the future starts today, right, Bobby? We excited?
The future does start today. Yeah, we're a little excited. Definitely want to see how Drake May does. I don't know if I would have started him versus the Texans with how their pass rush has been, but it's also been a secondary that you can attack through the first 5 or 6 weeks. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe they'll push the ball downfield a little bit more. Yeah, Drake May looks like he's going to be pretty good.
I did bet his over on rushing yards. I can't remember, it was like 27 or something like that a day or two ago. I don't know. I don't know if you have any. Are you in those player prop streets, Bobby, or not so much?
Like I look at people's posts like on Twitter that I think are relatively sharp. I think it correlates to DFS, but no, not like trying to find value and doing all this stuff you're doing.
Yeah. But another guy, but like Bijan's price has come down a little bit, but Bijan Robinson's been pretty terrible, been disappointing so far this season. We haven't seen like an amazing Amon-Ra week. He's been just kind of steady. He should be popular. At least people are going to want to roster him, but if you can only roster one big spend, is it going to be Amon-Ra? I don't know. Probably more likely Lamb on the other side. Henry looks amazing, and again, just salary issues, salary concerns is probably what's going to keep him down. And by speaking of, you guys are both talking about as far as running backs, being loaded. That's the other spot where there's value, not just Bucky Irving, but how do we feel about Antonio Gibson and just being attached at all to that New England offense? But the absence of Stevenson, we're not even playing the fumble game or not. He's just not playing. So, again, runway pretty clear for Gibson today. I don't know if the matchup's especially good, but volume sometimes is king. I guess we should have that conversation, Tim, as far as cash. You're kind of our cash game guy. Is there many players that you're just like for sure 100% this guy's in my cash lineup? I think quarterback is kind of fluid. Like one of these 3 guys for quarterback. Bucky Irving's in your cash lineup, almost definitely, I would assume. Yes.
Yes, 100%. You have to play Bucky today.
Probably Trey Tucker. I think Trey Tucker's probably in your cash lineup.
I think that's a little fluid. I don't think you have to. But I mean, I certainly wouldn't. I mean, he's currently in mine, but I don't think he's like a must. I don't think he's a must, but he certainly is a fine cash game play.
You want to give me the rundown on cash?
Yeah, sure. So I think I've kind of narrowed it down. Well, I guess I've kind of narrowed it down to 4 quarterbacks. Lamar is definitely viable at 7.8K if you want to pay all the way up. I think Dak Prescott at 6,700 is a fantastic play. I think one of maybe Jaden Daniels also is viable. I think he's kind of interesting. And then if you want to go all the way down, you go to Spencer Rattler. I think you can play him in cash games. I know. But like if he gets you 15 points, like that's going to be like plenty good. And we currently have him projected for 13.6. So I think if he gets you into those mid-teens, like that's plenty fine. And then you can pay up for, those, really, really good skill position players that we've talked about. So that's your path to getting to some of those, more expensive wide receivers or running backs if you want to play them. So I think he does open up some stuff for you if you elect to go.
He does. There. It's kind of a dual pronged thing where like if he gets you Henry or if he gets you Lamb or like 2 big spends and they both go off, then like the combination, it's not a 1v1 obviously, but certainly Lamar can put up 30. Prescott could put up 30. 303 is certainly in play. I guess we're projecting him for 13, 14 points or so as a median projection. Cody in chat says Lamar is a must. Like, yeah, if salary wasn't a thing, like for sure, you'll play Lamar. It's super obvious, but is that where you want to delegate your funds? I'm not going to yell at somebody if they play Lamar, and I'm not playing cash today. And that's probably what I would try to make work. And you said you're still kind of bouncing back and forth, right? I see TJ jumped on the show. He's a noted Saints fan, and he was excited about playing. I don't know if he was just he likes Rattler for tournaments, for cash as well.
He likes Rattler.
Yeah, but I'm saying across the board, or would he play him in his cash lineup? I'm curious, like kind of like what he gets.
I am playing him in my cash lineup. But I mean, like, again, I do love him. I think he is going to be better than Derek Carr, and even though the O-line is missing some guys today at 4K, I think he's a great play. But again, like you said, noted Saints fan, I am biased in this situation. I have him in cash, and I'm in 50% of my tournament lineups.
Do you have two big spends in your cash lineup? Like you have two of, like Amon-Ra, a Lamb, Henry, Barkley, and two of those guys?
I have Amon-Ra, Jaden Reed, McBride, and Bijan right now as where I'm spending my money.
Okay.
But I did ask a question in chat for Tim for a cash game setting, and that's Tucker, McBride, and Bijan, or Tolbert, Bowers, and Eckler.
I'd probably go the Tolbert one.
All right.
Is Eckler in your pool? Like, I know this is what you're being asked the question in 3v3, Tim. Is Eckler, I feel like he's kind of on the fringe of cash game.
He's definitely on the fringe of cash games. I would definitely have him in like single entry GPP stuff, though. I really do like him today. I don't think I can play him in cash just because there's so many other great, 6K, mid 5K running backs. So he's definitely going to fall off the board for me for cash games. But
Eckler versus Gibson for cash. I think it's Gibson, but I don't know.
It's actually neither for me.
Okay, but I'm saying if you had you kind of fell on that.
Yeah. I would definitely go Gibson over Eckler. Yeah.
That's another player prop I had just kind of coming up organically. I bet Eckler over receiving yards. I think it was like 28.5. You got to figure, the absence of Robinson playing the catch-up game down by 7. You're better off catching, throwing the ball in Baltimore is much the much clearer path than it is as opposed to rushing. Tight end, cash game tight end. Do you have anybody this is another one where you can kind of, I think Ferguson's the big spend. It's not even that expensive, but I think it's the guy. The cheapie's probably Cade Otton. I don't know how you feel about that. I don't love that. It's probably more so for tournaments, but I do like McBride. I don't know if you have to force that for cash. Is it the same sort of deal where you're kind of bouncing back and forth between like three guys at different pricing tiers?
Yeah, it's really, for me, it's either Ferguson or Otton. I'm leaning towards Ferguson right now because I've got Dak as my cash game quarterback in cash and in single entry, so I'm pairing him with Ferguson. So Ferguson right now is in both of my lineups.
All right. Anything else you want to say as far as cash specifically that's of note? I'm sure more stuff will come out organically as there'll be more questions popping up in chat as well, but we generally kind of knock that out when we first jump on, just a general cash game layout.
Yeah, I mean, I know that the Blitz really loves Antonio Gibson. I'm really just not a fan of getting anything attached with that offense. So I'm fading Antonio Gibson in cash, and I'm fading him in single entry as well. People can elect to do what they want. I'm certainly not saying that the Blitz is wrong, but I just have no interest in that offense at all. So I think there are just better plays that you can get to at running back. Running back is really loaded today, so I'm making a stand and saying no on Gibson in cash.
Yeah, we said 11 games on FanDuel, 10 on DK. The FanDuel game's pretty spicy, actually. Cincinnati and the Giants. Burrow taking on Jones, pretty good pieces. Looks like Singletary's not going to play as well. I know our projections like Wan'Dale Robinson, although I prefer him more just kind of like what he does with those 4-yard catches on DK. Of course, again, he's not on DK with the full point PPR. Just again, remember Cincinnati, New York. That is FanDuel only. 15.5 total, Bobby, for your Patriots as far as a team total. That's why I would assume one of the reasons why Tim is not in on that. But they are cheap. Gibson's pretty cheap. The receivers are pretty cheap. They're saying Bourne probably plays today, but it's all different. The receivers for New England, it's just such nonsense. It's hard to rely on anybody there. Of course, the other side of that game, Nico Collins, which is a big bummer. Diggs is another guy, just to me, just seems way overpriced always. I know, like, now, okay, opportunity should increase, but even still, I don't understand his price dating back to last season. It's kind of a different conversation. But is this slate smaller for you, Bobby? Because I think there's some games with, I don't like to just cross out games, but kind of. I'm just not going to be playing Cleveland offense. I just do not anticipate that. I think I'm done with Amari Cooper. I think so. I'm pretty sure I'm done with that. Pittsburgh and the Raiders feels like a slog, 36.5. Chargers, Broncos. I know Dobbins is well positioned coming back from the bye, but it's a tough matchup on both sides. Another game that doesn't really jump off the page, obviously. It just sort of feels a little bit smaller to me than it is, 10 games, 11 games. Do you feel the same way, or tell me I'm wrong? Where are you at as far? Are you just kind of honing in like these are the 4 games I like and that's that?
It felt smaller when I was going through it last night. I will say, like, I have guys from my player pool from every game, not necessarily every team, but pretty much every game. Yeah, it's a 10-game slate. Like, buys are now a thing. So yeah, it feels a little bit smaller, but I'm not really Xing too many players. I'm just not going to have like full stacks of teams in a 15-point total. I was trying to make the New England thing work with Drake May, Polk, and Demario Douglas and Henry, but I've kind of come off that. Just because it's super cheap and, like, you know what I mean? Just taking a shot at the unknown, I guess. I do really like Polk. If I had to say one person from New England, yeah, Polk at 3,800, I think, is a very good play. And I think you can play guys like Polk, Demario Douglas, and Hunter Henry individually. I would make a rule at most one of those 3. Of the pass catchers, obviously Gibson can hit your teams. I might actually make a rule and throw Gibson in there too, because like I said, the total's 15 points. I don't think Drake May is going to be terrible today. I think he's going to be all right. Yeah, I think he has more upside than what we're giving him credit for. He's going to use his legs. I'll take 4,900 Drake May over TJ Spencer Rattler. He can slide in at 4K. But it's not a game that I really want to stack too much. I don't know. Maybe like a May to Polk and then just go from there.
So you don't like anybody in Houston, or not to say, I shouldn't say don't like, but you don't love. Again, Collins is a big loss. The biggest, best receiver in football the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season. I know you like Dell historically. Diggs a little bit pricey. Schultz, I think, is fine. Mixon coming back as well. Could muck stuff up. And Stroud's was tough.
I would have to say, like, Tank Dell's probably my favorite. I think Christian Gonzalez will likely take Diggs for the majority of the game. And any chance I can get to play a low-owned Dell, I'll play him. Schultz is the biggest beneficiary with Nico Collins out. He's seeing an increase in production. I think he's fine. And Joe Mixon being back, like, maybe people overlook Joe Mixon. This is a spot where the Texans are favored. They're a 7-point favorite, 8-point favorite. No one's going to play Joe Mixon. Like, I like Joe Mixon in the spot. Playing QB Stroud, I'm probably not doing that. But yeah, I definitely have interest in getting overweight on Tank Dell. I guess you could say Mixon and Schultz I'll probably match the field on, I'll be over on Mixon, Schultz. In 150, I'd probably actually be over on both now that I'm looking at it. But
we're showing all of them at single-digit ownership.
Yeah,
for what it's worth. So it's not hard to get over.
It's not hard to get over
if you like them.
Polk for me is easily the best run back. I think Polk has a very good day today. Who's in Polk? What's Trey Tucker's price? 4,200, 4,100. I like Trey Tucker.
Yeah.
But Polk's at 38, correct?
36, I believe. There's just nobody in the threes that like I feel okay. I thought AD Mitchell would be a guy that could be unleashed possibly, but what do you got?
Feel okay about Polk. Polk will be fine today.
Okay. I mean, I like the talent as well, but like, you think it's the quarterback change is going to help him? Because he's done nothing so far this year.
I think the quarterback change will help the entire offense. The issue would be the offensive line. That's not changing anytime soon. But Drake will extend plays with his legs, and he's going to get the ball out of his hand quicker, so it should lead to more opportunities.
Yeah, Mitchell was going to be, I don't know one of your guys, Bobby, but it doesn't look like he's going to get unleashed today. I mean, not that you can't play him, but, looks like Pittman and Downs are both going to play for Indy. So, you got to tell yourself a story as far as Mitchell because he's well behind those guys right now. Do you have your quarterback pool whittled down to like 3 or 4 or 5? Are you still kind of figuring it out?
Currently, it is Dak Prescott, Jaden Daniels, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, and Will Levis.
Ooh, the Levis.
I like Will Levis.
I think it's a Will Levis day today. He's not my favorite, but in large field stuff, I think if you have a little Will Levis exposure, you can go there.
You could tell yourself the story, right? You got threatened last time with, I guess it was injury, and maybe he could have came back in the game, maybe not. He was also playing poorly. Rudolph jumped in there. They had a bye week. Maybe they figured out some stuff in the bye week. Of course, the matchup versus Indy is really good too. And I think Ridley and Hopkins are both pretty good prices in that mid-tier. I think Ridley's got more of a ceiling than Hopkins these days. You said you liked Levis as well, Tim. Is that something like I don't like the run backs? If you're thinking like game stack, I don't feel great about any run back in Indy. I don't think
you need a run back, to be honest with you.
Talk about
Levis. We didn't really talk about Tony Pollard yet because Tony Pollard's going to be mega chalk. So Pollard's going to be in my cash game lineup, but I think Levis is pretty good leverage. Going Levis Ridley or Levis Hopkins is pretty good leverage off of Tony Pollard. And I think Levis is also leverage off of guys like the min price guy there, Rattler. Yeah. So I think Levis is actually in a pretty good spot. We've seen the Colts secondary get exposed multiple times this season. So Levis is definitely a boomer bust type play. I don't think he would crack anything for me in like a 3 max, but if I was getting to say like 10 or more lineups, I would probably have one Will Levis, maybe just a single stack. Obviously, I think I would fade Pollard in that team, and I don't think I'd necessarily have to have any run backs at all. So, but I don't really mind Will Levis at all today.
By the way, I don't know if we specified. Bodyguard was asking Tim for cash. It's a 3 running back cash day, correct?
Yes, it is definitely a 3 running back day for cash. I will say though that when I was running Sims before the show, I was getting more exposure to wide receivers in flex than I was running backs. So that is something to consider for an MME player. But for cash, I definitely 100% go 3 running backs.
We'll run some Sims later on in the show. We're here for the next hour and 5 minutes until 11 o'clock. SquirrelPatrol, Erik come on, and then they get relieved, I think, at 12:15, I want to say, with comes in. TJ does a double duty, and then TheLuuch as well. Take you guys all the way up to kickoff. What's going on in that London game? Anything of note? Anything interesting? Anybody keeping an eye on that? Let's see. It is 3-0 Jacksonville. Currently in the first
seems
quarter.
Like a pretty exciting game.
It's a barn burner for sure. It's very, very exciting stuff. Bigsby 3 carries, ETN 1. So maybe Bigsby has jumped him in the power rankings. ETN there's thought that he might not. Yeah. What do you have, Bobby?
I think that's good for us. That's good for us, right? Bigsby. Do we have a lot of Bigsby in best ball? I feel like the 3 of us do.
I don't think I have a lot of big. I have 0 ETN essentially. So
I have basically no ETN.
I have 0.
He was one of my big fades.
Yeah,
I was not in on it. But yeah, that's I have. Everybody else I have is hurt. Unfortunately, I guess everybody else is dealing with the same stuff in best ball. All right. By the way, Baker Mayfield's the one you threw out there, Bobby, and I saw somebody in chat asking about it, and I was going to ask as well, and how much you care about this stuff. And you kind of dig into the wide receiver quarterback matchups probably a little bit more than myself and Tim do. One that supposedly matters, right? The Lattimore, Evans one, that there is a history there. They've got each other kicked out of games before. I think Evans has got him of late, but historically, Lattimore has held him down at least years back. So talk to me about Baker Mayfield and your pairing. Do you prefer? I assume you're going to probably have different routes, but who's your preference? Who's your lean? All things being equal, Evans or Godwin as a pairing with Baker Mayfield.
I prefer Godwin, but I'm not shying away from Evans. I think a lot of people are just going to shy away from Evans because of the narrative. I'll play Evans in larger field stuff. In my single entries in 3 max, I'll definitely have some Godwin. I think Baker's interesting. I think he really is here. A lot of his guys projecting well. Godwin, Kate Otten, Bucky Irving. Way to leverage Bucky or differentiate Bucky's to play Baker.
So no Bucky in the lineup.
No, you can still play Bucky. Like, I'm going to be overweight to Bucky and just let it hit. But yeah,
kind of an onslaught.
I like the Bucks today. I even think in larger field stuff you can work in McMillan. I'm not going to do that a ton, but he's in my player pool. If he hits one team, he hits one team. I just Baker's one of the guys that I think is going to go overlooked, and he shouldn't really. Yeah, so I want to be overweight there. How do you feel about Baker?
Push back is the question, Bobby. You think New Orleans can push back? Like they can kind of push Tampa to keep their foot in the pedal. They're only 4-point dogs at home.
The interesting thing is they have 0 Rattler, which is like I should probably have more Rattler because I would want them to push back. But I like Kamara. I think Kamara is in a good spot. Olave has a squeaky wheel narrative. I think they're going to try to basically, Rattler said he's going to target Olave as much as possible, which is a really good idea.
Probably decide a couple quick and easy ones for him, I would imagine, right? Just to kind of get him going.
Yeah, just to get him going.
Just some short stuff. Get a point here and a point there. But beyond that, yeah.
My issue with Rattler in the Saints offense, and it really doesn't matter because of how cheap he's priced, is just their offensive line issues. But he's 4K, so I guess you can make the case to play him. I currently don't think I'm doing it. I probably pay the $1,000, the 800 more for Will Levis, or another 1,000 for Drake May, just because you're playing it pretty much into ownership. I don't know. I don't love it, but for the opportunity for guys to push back like Kamara and Olave, I think makes sense.
I don't know how much you guys watch college football. I don't watch a ton. I'm aware he played for South Carolina. I was looking at his numbers, and he had a lot of rushes in college. But I think a lot of that is like him just scrambling around and getting sacked. Like in 2022, 73 rushing attempts, but for 46 yards, right? 97 the next year for 104. So like maybe I thought he could scoot a little bit. That's what I've been told, but maybe not, because he's just like him getting basically. Because they grade rushing yards differently in college. Like you get negative yards for sacks. That doesn't happen in the pros. I don't know if you did the deep dive on this, which, by the way, I did the player profiler, and I think you know what the Rattlers player profiler is? Baker Mayfield. that is just up. Just, I mean, that, take it for the grain of salt, that kind of thing. But that was kind of funny when that's the projecting the be based upon his cone drill or whatever. Yeah. If you're making 20 lineups, Tim, I know you're not, but you are making 20, hypothetically. Does Rattler crack one? You make one Rattler lineup?
I'd probably make more than one if I was making 20 lineups. Maybe I'd get to like 2 or 3.
Do you force pairing with him or not necessarily?
I actually think that pairing him with Kamara is kind of interesting. I think that pairing him with Olave is fine. Shaheed is fine. I'd probably mix and match depending on how many that I make. I know that Kamara, I mean, he's projected for pretty high ownership. I wouldn't shock me at all if he got squeezed a little bit in terms of ownership, just because we have so many strong running backs.
For sure.
And his projection, I mean, he's got a really, really strong projection across the entire industry. But I just don't know how many people are actually going to click his name. Just because we have so many guys. We have Henry above him. We have so many guys below him that people are going to be clicking, I think, a lot more aggressively, whether it be Bijan, Pollard, Bucky, obviously. We've already talked about Eckler. We've talked a lot of these, 6K guys. So I think Kamara might be a squeeze candidate on the slate. What do you think about that, Bobby?
Are you going to do a lot of? I guess he's fine. I don't know if you guys saw he had a wrist or a hand. I guess there's no official injury designation, but he was dealing with a body part or two. But as far as I know, he's good to go. Probably should have cut you off of that. But just actives and inactives, you'll see at 11:30. I assume he's playing, but just got to be aware of this. And still no Taysom Hill as well, which is also important.
Yeah.
I do think you're right. I do see him getting squeezed because it's even been a button that's been hard for me to click as well. And you're kind of saying the same thing, and you feel like the industry is probably looking at it, seeing the same thing as us. So yeah, I think he probably gets squeezed. I'm gonna bump his projection a little bit, make sure I get him in there. Todd Bowles is gonna blitz a ton. Quick outlet to the running back. There's no one behind him. No Taysom Hill. I want to make sure he hits my teams, so I'll have exposure to Kamara.
Do you have any Rattler or Kamara? Do you think that that's a viable strategy?
I think it's fine if you're playing Rattler. I have no Rattler. Like, it's Will Levis, paying the $800 for Will Levis. I didn't mention Drake May being in my player pool, but he's hitting like 1% of my teams. So I don't know. Yeah. I think those guys are pivots. I'm currently not playing any Rattler. Like the Bucks D too. Like, are the Bucks D the chalks?
Yeah.
That's gonna be like the cash game D.
You and everybody else. Yeah.
Me and everyone else. I feel like Bowles is coming, right? Like, I guess you can play it.
Gotta be.
Yeah, he's sending the blitz. So yeah, I guess one way to leverage it is to play Rattler, play Olave, play Kamara.
I thought you were gonna say play Rattler with Tampa defense, which it's not bonkers to do that.
Well,
that's not bonkers.
Yeah.
I just, I don't think that stuff's completely nuts. It's just like that.
You're just saying playing by himself in Tampa defense, right? Or you're saying playing?
Yeah. Like, you can play Rattler. He can get the 20, and Tampa defense can get the 20. Like, both those things can happen in the same.
But you're not. Are you playing like a Kamara or an Olave in that scenario?
I like Olave a little bit. TJ he dropped a quote there in chat. I saw the press thing that he probably saw as well. Rattler's just like, he basically said like Olave is special. I'm going to get him the ball. If he's open, I'm going to get the ball to him. And I guess that's what you're supposed to say. But yeah, you'd have to imagine that's what he's going to be looking to. I was thinking like a way to be different possibly is to play them against each other because they're not, there is some negative correlation, but I'm open to play. I'm probably thinking too deep in that one though. I wouldn't cross that
like a slight galaxy brain.
Sam, by the way, in chat is mentioning, Miller is active today for the first time. Speaking of best ball, I have way too many shares of Miller. Who knows how they're going to unleash him if they do it all? Kendre Miller, like all the coach speak was like, we basically hate him. He's got to stop getting hurt. They generally speaking, they try to be positive about things, but there wasn't a lot of positivity. But he's going to be active, and I don't know if he jumps Jamal Williams or if he even gets it. He worked in at all, but.
Is Dennis Allen the coach there?
Yes.
Yeah, he's not really a positive guy in terms of like, I don't know, way to kill a guy's confidence, Dennis Allen. I'm with you. Like every interview I watched and him talking about the backup, he's like crushing. Yeah, it's just like I don't know if that's the approach you want to take.
We have Keandre Miller projected for 0.12 rush attempts.
Yeah,
we have Shaheed projected for more rush attempts. So
and he's kind of banged up too, right? Shaheed, for what it's worth.
Well, I think he's fine now, and they might have like maybe if they threw him on the IL, maybe TJ could speak to this, but the IR, not the IL, wrong sport team. But I think he's fine and healthy.
Bobby said Shaheed, not Miller. Who are we talking about?
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you talking Shaheed, Bobby?
Yeah, Shaheed. Wasn't he banged up on the Island game? Did he get nicked up there?
Yeah, he's fine now. He sat up a couple days practices for rest and then practiced in full before.
Oh, there we go.
All right. Tim, single entry, 3 entry max. Have you settled on your quarterback? Your team, your stack?
Yeah, I'm probably going pretty heavy on Dallas. I'm considering a Dallas triple in single entry. Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. So that's Lamb, that's Ferguson, and that's Tolbert?
Yep.
Oh, interesting.
I can tell you, I love being aligned with Tim. Makes me feel good.
So the run back is Gibbs, Montgomery, Amon-Ra. You don't have the money for Amon-Ra, so no, it's not him. I don't think you do, right?
There are ways you can actually do that.
You can get Dak, Lamb, Amon-Ra. That's tough.
Yep.
Yeah. But is it all the same path? Like, is it all going to be like, do for the Raiders? Bucky, Gibson. Is it all the same, like next 4 guys or like Tampa?
Yeah, I mean that's the problem is that you kind of like build into the exact same team everybody else would. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with Detroit yet, but I am looking pretty heavily at a Dallas triple.
I just tried to do it with Jeremy McNichols as one of my running backs, and it gave me 100 off from a team I would actually like.
How much is McNichols? He's got to be in the 4s.
4,500.
Yeah.
He got a lot of work after Brian Robinson was sitting out for a while.
So Baltimore, just since you mentioned it, TJ, maybe you've investigated this. Baltimore's up by like 17, right? And it's start of the 4th quarter. Is McNichols out there or is Eckler out there? Because Eckler's like the better pass catching back, but like does Washington almost like concede the game and say, screw it? Eckler, I don't know. Just I'm trying to think. I was trying to think of ways working him in there as kind of a run back for Baltimore, and I didn't feel great about it. Maybe Noah Brown is like the way to go. It's like a cheap 3K receiver, 3-ish, 3.9. Anyways, so Tim, you said it's Dallas is kind of where you're landing right now.
Yeah, I'm going to be super, super heavy on the Dallas passing game, and I think there's multiple ways that you can play that in large field GPPs as well. I'm really not heavy on either of their running backs. I think this is going to be the Dak show. I absolutely love this game. I know a lot of people will also. It's got a huge implied team total. So I think, finding ways to get different with your stacks, I think is very, very important for this game. I was getting to a lot of Goff and Sims. I don't hate that either. Kind of like, going a little bit of like maybe a Goff, JMO, Amon-Ra stack, something like that. I think is an interesting way to like kind of like flip a little bit of ownership. But I think Dak is the way safer and better play. And, Dallas, they are home dogs. So, I mean, they should be right now. I know. So, I mean, This should be a good script for Dak, really. So I think Dak is, one of the best plays on the slate, cash or large field GPPs.
If you look at the Blitz, Derek Hardy, the Blitz game level factors, Detroit and Dallas are projected to have 1-2 as far as the most plays. So you like seeing that as well. The one thing on the Pick Six show earlier this week, myself, Rebar, and Daigle, I think I might have been Rebar was pointing it out. What might blow this game up is Detroit just running the ball down the throat of Dallas and like having like 8 or 9 minute like drives because 7 yards, 7 yards, 6 yards, and just gashing him. I could see that. Newly extended Montgomery.
If you want to build it like that, then I'd go Montgomery and Lamb, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like if you think Detroit's gonna just like control the ball, I still think Lamb smashes. So if you want to play it with that kind of narrative or that kind of style of game, I'd go Montgomery and Lamb.
It's interesting you think there's, and I'm not saying there's not, but there's enough meat in the bone there for Dak to support 3 pass catchers, and salary wise, Lamb's really he's got to beat a lot of other big names that we've not yet talked about, or Amon-Ra for one. on the other side. A.J. Brown, we haven't talked about Philly. I think Philly's kind of the sneaky team today. It's everybody kind of forgot they existed. And they're, the vibes in Cleveland are horrendous, obviously. Just I'm sort of surprised they're only like 8.5-point favorites coming back from the bye and whatever nonsense is happening in Cleveland. It doesn't take much to get over on Hurts. I do want to get attached to that Philly offense. There's a question in chat here. Good question here for Tim. B is asking a triple. You're talking about running triples, Tim. For single entry, is it better for single entry for small field or large field when you're running triples? How do you prefer to use them? If you're going to do triples, you probably don't want to do it like a 30,000 person field, I'm guessing. Or more apt to do it in the smaller field.
I'd be more apt to do it in a smaller field. This game, though, the way that I'm seeing it could kind of like be the exception to that rule, though. I think there's a lot of fantasy points to be had, so I think this game could blow up even large field.
Devin makes a good point. The vibes in Cleveland are similar to the vibes in Philly. Yeah, the vibes in Philly are weird too. Like a carryover from this. Maybe that's what it is. Like, there's weird stuff going on in Philadelphia, probably dating back to last year, and maybe that stuff hasn't cleaned up just yet, and they have to figure it out. But yeah, it just seems strange that Philly's not a bigger favorite today. But maybe they're just not quite there either. But they're getting back Brown, Smith, Johnson, their top linemen. So I think they're well positioned to do pretty well today. Any other quarterbacks we want to talk about, but specifically here, Tim, before we move on and talk about the other positions?
No, I think we're good.
You got anything, Bobby?
I'm with Tim. Dallas all the way today. If you're going to stack up that game, I like Sam Laporta. Grades out well versus too high. Dallas has been playing a lot of too high. And I like JMO a good bit. I think JMO is a guy you just want to have an allocation to in tournaments. So going to be playing some Jameson Williams. And I prefer Gibbs to Montgomery. I don't know if you guys hit on Gibbs, but I think of the two running backs, I want to play Gibbs just for the upside. I just think Montgomery's ceiling is kind of capped in large field tournaments or just tournaments in general. He's fine in smaller field stuff, obviously, but
I have no argument with that Gibbs is a better large field GPP play. He definitely has a much higher ceiling, but I really don't mind David Montgomery today, though, either. But Gibbs is the better play in large field.
Yeah,
there's a squeaky wheel narrative there with Montgomery. They just paid him yesterday. So
does that mean the wheel is squeaky? I mean,
I was gonna say
he's just
well,
good.
They want to get him in the end zone. They want to justify their salary increase.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but I mean, good for him. Running backs, it's hard for them to get paid sometimes. He got a 2-year extension, I think like $20 million or so or something like that. JMO is a tricky one, and we'll talk about this more as we dig into receivers, but just high variance, right? He's only had 3 receptions the last 2 weeks, 5 targets in total, but not all targets are created equal. His targets are big targets and big swings for JMO, and he can get you there on just 3 pass catches. Sometimes he can put up 3 catches for 120 and 2 or something like that, and he's still kind of in the mid tier as far as asking price. All right, so before we talk about receivers, I do want to talk to you guys about Splash Sports. Splash Sports, they are raising the game with their brand new Quick Picks contest, giving you a chance to win up to 12 times your entry. Just pick more or less on any stat categories and build your entry using at least 2 selections. Available now in 34 states, Splash Sports is the ultimate platform for peer-to-peer fantasy and betting contests. Challenge the RG experts at splashsports.com/RotoGrinders. And we also have a promo code for you. Promo code ROTO10. Get $10 credit when you join your first contest. And with more from Splash Sports, here's Chop.
Chop here talking about Splash Sports and their new feature, Quick Picks in the lobby. It's like the traditional Quick Picks on other sites where you go more or less on all the player props, but it's not like the other sites in that you're going peer-to-peer instead of against the house. Quick tip is if you click on the player card, it pulls up many more props for that player. My 2-teamer this week is going to have DJ Moore over 61.5 yards against Jacksonville and Derrick Henry over 84.5 rushing yards against Washington. I'm Chop. I'll be back next week with some more quick picks. Until then, good luck.
I don't want to call Chop out mid-game, but I just did check the box score. DJ Moore is playing right now, and he's got -2 receiving yards in the second quarter. But there's still plenty of time to turn that around.
So you didn't want to call him out, but you called out old Chop, right?
I was checking.
I don't know why that was necessary, Dean. I really don't know.
I wanted to say, what a heck of a call. He might be already over. He look at this. Chop nailed it. And well,
Chopper probably worked really hard on that video too, Dean.
Of course he did. I'm just
put in a lot of effort, and you're besmirching him. It's
there was no besmirching. I'm rooting for it. DJ Moore now has to get how many 2 more yards plus whatever the number is, which is currently in Komet scored a touchdown, by the way, for those that care, those that dabbled in the showdown streets. There you go, Williams to Komet. All right, 7-3, 11, plenty of time for DJ Moore to turn it all around. By the way, I gave a shout out to Chop. I want to give a shout out to Superdog. I'm going to call this person Superdog. SOUPERDG. Maybe it's Super DG. Superdog. Superdog took down the Listener League Week 5. Do not forget to join in the fun. RG's Listener League. Play alongside the viewers. Play alongside us, your favorite RG hosts. You'll have a chance to win every single week. Get a chance to win. This is not a week free. We do week free contests all the time. You get a month free of RotoGrinders Premium. Football, baseball, basketball, hockey in full swing. Shout out to TastefulTides Tim, by the way. Finished the third, I believe, the other night in the 333. He's too humble to tell you. Tim knows his hockey. By the way, also want to shout out to Discord Channel 10. You guys are on fire in there. Best Discord channel that I'm aware of. And no nonsense. You don't even allow me in there. You guys don't like my nonsense. You want to know the lines. You want to know up to the minute changes because the lines are always changing. For real. It doesn't cost you anything either. You don't need an RG subscription. You just need a regular RG login. It doesn't have to be a paid one. Tim, how have the hockey streaks treated you so far? About a week or so in, my Panthers are already injured and struggling, but it was a good run last year, so I can't complain just yet.
Yeah, it's been pretty good so far. Did have that one good day, excuse me. Also, why have I been kicked out of the Listener League?
Who kicked you out?
I don't know. I have no invite last 2 weeks. I'm out of the Listener League. So
I get a recurring invite. So I don't know if Bobby gets a recurring invite. I get a recurring invite from DK. I believe it's from Devin. Just go ahead and there should still be some spots remaining. I believe there's up to 200 spots, and I checked before the show, and we had like 60 spots left. Are they all taken? They don't cost anything, by the way. It doesn't cost anything to enter. It's free to enter. There's no it's not like a regular contest. It's just free. If you're playing anything on DK today, just take your contest and throw it in there. And if you happen to win it, you get a month free of RG Premium. So again, spots are unlimited. Tim, I don't know if you did a special request or if you somehow clicked a button that said stop the recurring invites. I don't know what happened. I can't speak to it, but that's not my department.
I was having fun in that contest. now I don't have any fun at all, Dean.
Well, then you must be happy then. Why are you complaining? You're not a big fan. You are anti-fun. So this works out for everybody. Does Bobby mess around with this tournament? I don't know if he does or does not. But
we build a team on tournament takes, and I get scolded for giving the full lineup every week.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't give the full lineup.
I just forget
the business
to do that.
Yeah, fair enough. But go ahead and fill that up. Again, it's in the description on the YouTube. All right, running backs. Do we want to actually talk about running backs in a sense of the Sims? Because I know that Tim, you were talking about that. I kind of ran them earlier today. I know TJ will probably throw them on the screen as well. But a lot of it is, not always, but a lot of it is kind of like the inverse of which running backs are popular. Sometimes you see super popular running backs still happen to end up looking really, really good. But you mentioned some stuff you saw in the Sims, and I saw there's an update, 848. Let me see if we have a new one. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Let me give me a refresh. No, not just yet, but there will be a new one coming in, I presume, before kickoff when new information comes in. But Tim, what are the Sims telling you as far as running backs?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Sims, it makes a lot of sense. The Sims absolutely love Derrick Henry, just because it's hard to give a medium projection of his massive ceiling. But that's what the Sims show, is his massive ceiling. So Derrick Henry is simming out really, really well, which makes a ton of sense. I'm not a Derrick Henry guy. I actually played him last week for the first time in forever, and he got incredibly lucky to get there. He broke that run in overtime. But other than that, he was like a dud. Would not fault anybody if they wanted to play him in cash games this week. And normally I'm not a Henry and cash game guy at all. But I mean, that's what you get if you play Rattler, is like you get Derrick Henry. So
Yeah.
And then you could probably get one premium receiver as well. So yeah, it makes a ton of sense that Henry is simming out really, really well. Tony Pollard, I think, this is what we talk about with good chalk. Pollard's going to be popular, but he's also simming well. So, Pollard's going to be a cash game staple, at least for me. Definitely, I think he's a fantastic play. So I absolutely love him. And then Bijan, right, against this horrible Carolina defense. I think Atlanta is like, oh man, they're really, really tough for me today in cash. Like, I'm probably going to be playing Bucky, Pollard, and Bijan in cash. But it's definitely an interesting spot because I think they're going to be really, really highly owned. So I was actually kind of surprised to see that Bijan was still simming so well, just because it tends to want to talk you off of chalky plays, but Sims love Bijan. Carolina's defense is absolutely atrocious. And I was kind of thinking Kamara would sim a little bit better, but he's still simming pretty decently. So showing up in 17% of optimals, which is pretty strong for his price. Really no massive surprises. I thought maybe Saquon would be a little bit better. Just because his projected ownership is going to be so light. And we know that he has a massive ceiling in any matchup. So I thought Bijan would be a little bit better in Sims. But yeah, it's definitely, I think Henry is just such a strong play, and I really hate recommending Derrick Henry.
I think everybody likes him. It's just a salary thing. The Bijan thing is salary has kind of worked its way down, 7-7 start of the season, 7-2, 7, 7-4, 7-1. Now he's in the sixes, well deserved. He just hasn't been very good. The offense hasn't been clearly his. It's still a timeshare back there. Dealing with a hamstring, which I never really like. Those tend to linger. That's a little apprehension I have. But like you said, the great matchup here, if not now, when? This certainly sets up as a really good spot for him. Or maybe Arthur Smith was just right. Maybe he was right about Bijan, and we all owe him an apology. I am surprised how much more the Sims chalky Pollard over chalky Bucky Irving. That one kind of surprised me. It does Gibbs as well. I don't know, Bobby, if you can see what we're doing here, if you see the screen, if you haven't opened it yourself. But yeah, Henry looking really, really good as far as optimal versus projected ownership. And Bucky Irving way at the bottom. And maybe I'm a fish, but I feel really good about Bucky Irving today. And also, I just need that salary. Again, I'm pinching pennies. And what's our official take? Because he's probably the most popular play on this slate here, Bobby. You're playing a lot of the, large field, millie stuff. And I'm playing more the single entry, 3-entry max stuff but again, the ownership gets even higher on those guys. He's going to be enormous as far as the ownership. Do we have an official Bucky take, Bobby?
Yeah, I think being around or slightly below the field on Bucky makes sense. But currently I'm overweight on Bucky, so I got to figure this out because the way he's simming for me is similar to how he's simming with RG. I think he's a good play. I don't know why. I kind of default to the Sims in these scenarios. So I'll probably be with the field on Bucky, maybe slightly under, but yeah, in small field stuff, I think I'll just slam Bucky, be overweight, and then in larger field stuff, I'll take a field or underweight approach.
Jacobs is another guy that's simming pretty good. I tried to make that happen last week. It didn't work, but I thought the thought process was good, and I think the thought process is good again this week for Jacobs. You can run in Arizona. By the way, that's the one game that has some potential weather. Let me give a refresh. I got Ross weather reports. It's currently yellow-orange. Really not a lot of rain today in Green Bay, but the timing in the rain does look problematic for game time. I'm reading what Ross said, obviously. Best guess on timing currently is for scattered showers for the earlier parts of the game, at times fairly heavy. Drier for the latter half. Probably a good idea to check my Twitter pregame for an update in that timing. at Kevin Roth. Probably has not updated it just yet, but he's going to knock that out in the next 2.5 hours. Nothing really else of note. It is yellow in New England, 10 to 15 miles per hour winds in Tennessee. Same deal in Baltimore, but neither really all that concerning. Did you have a thought, Bobby, as far as Jacobs? Madison is also a guy that's looking pretty good. The quarterback change there for Vegas. It looks like his backfield there looking pretty solid. Gibson's got a slight positive as well. Anybody here you disagree with, strongly agree with, or a name you want to enter the conversation?
For me, one sec. Let me just pull this up quick. I think that Derrick Henry, I have similar feelings to Tim on Derrick Henry, where I hate to roster him. But this week, just get overweight on Henry makes a good bit of sense. Bucky, Pollard, Bijan even. I think I'm going to be under. I know our Sims are saying that Bijan's a really good play. The guy I like is J.K. Dobbins a little bit at 6,200. Him. Let me just pull 1 second. Who did I like on Barkley for sure? Like Barkley, Henry. Gibbs is good. I like Eckler too. I'll play Eckler. Eckler got the majority of the snaps after Brian Robinson went out, so I'm not really worried about McNichols. Najee Harris is simming well for me, and no one likes the Najee Harris. Me being another one of those people that doesn't like to click the Najee Harris button, I think I'm going to click it this week. James Conner in that Green Bay, Arizona game, which I think the usage is going to be distributed pretty heavily on the Green Bay side, but Connor's been good, so I like Connor. Joe Mixon, I think Joe Mixon's going to is someone that's at 6,900. No one's going to play. I think
does he get a full allotment? I don't want to I'm sorry to cut you off, but does he get a full allotment? And also Pierce is back too. So
I think
he's a full go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he's a full go.
Nobody's playing.
The Madison call is interesting. I do like the Vegas D versus Fields. I think they're an interesting correlation play there. I'm trying to J.K. Dobbins and Eckler, I think are guys that I'm going to be overweight on because I don't, like Tim said, people don't want to click the Eckler button in cash. I like Eckler. I'm fine with it. They're going to have, I just feel like he's going to be utilized as he's seen pretty much the usage that he saw after Robinson would equate to a workhorse role. So I think that works. There are a lot of Javonte Williams. I don't want to click that button either, but he's simming well.
Do we have a Steam getting a estimate? Is he getting any projection or any sort of a care? He's expected back today.
That's the issue.
Giving him a couple. Yeah. Does he get worked in some way?
They want to play 3 running backs for some reason.
Yeah.
We're giving him 2.5 rushing attempts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
running back's pretty spread out, but my 2 favorites are Barkley and Henry for sure.
Another player that's simming out really well, sorry Bobby, real quick, is Jahmyr Gibbs. We've talked a lot about that game, and he's simming. He's got some pretty decent positive leverage going for him, whereas Montgomery has some negative leverage. So that can help you make that decision between those 2 backs and that amazing game. That is my favorite game on the entire slate. So I guess I need to be leaning more into Gibbs than Montgomery.
I really like Gibbs. I think Gibbs is a phenomenal play in that game. I also think you can play some Dowdle. I know people aren't going to be willing to play Dowdle, but we've seen him basically take over the backfield role on that Island game the other night. So in larger field stuff, you could throw Dowdle in there. But Gibbs, you can play.
You think he gets there with catches? Is that kind of the route? Because I don't know how much you can get in the ground versus Detroit. I mean, I guess they'll try, but the best route against Detroit is to pass against them. You think at 20 carries that last game versus Pittsburgh, like you said.
What do you guys think about like Chuba and Pollard? Like I feel like I'm going to be under the field on both.
I don't think Pollard beats me.
Yeah, I have.
That's how I feel about. That's how I feel about Chuba.
I feel the same about both, to be honest.
Well, there you go. I really like Pollard today. I think he's good chalk, and I don't know. That's my opinion. The Sims kind of backs it up as well. In the optimal 27% of the time, only 23% ownership. Pretty good positive leverage score there.
Yeah.
I like Pollard, but obviously it's not always the exact science.
I kind of like Calvin Ridley. I think it's my first Titan. If I was going to pick a Titan, I don't feel great about saying that sentence out loud. I'm talking tournaments, obviously.
Right.
I can see him just, coming off the bye. They try to figure some stuff out, I would imagine, reorganize. It's a great matchup to come back to here against Indy. And I can see him like 125-2 or something like that. I can really see that today. I like the price as well. Hopkins, I think he's fine. I just don't see the ceiling. And like Ridley is Gibbs and Hopkins is Montgomery. It's just sort of like they're going to do it that way. I just think that Ridley's got a potential big ceiling, and I'm fine with Pollard. If I land on him, so be it. But if I'm trying to be a little less chalky, I'm okay not playing.
I like both, and it's funneling me to Will Levis. So I don't know. I think both
doubles.
Are fine. I think you want to play one of the two. Ridley obviously has the ceiling, but they just came off a bye. 2 weeks prior to the bye, they were working Hopkins in more. Maybe he's a full go. And I think Hopkins seems to have a better rapport with Levis. Although the coaching staff, there's a squeaky wheel narrative there with Ridley. They said they want to get Ridley more involved. So, yeah.
All right. Anything else as far as running backs we should mention? We should mention like button has not been getting hit for whatever reason. I'm not sure what the number is, but it's a little bit too low. It's my understanding. So kindly, if you don't mind, hit that like button, smash it, caress it, tap it, whatever your adjective of choice happens to be. We're not going anywhere, of course. Still 2.5 hours, taking you guys all the way up to kickoff. Ebeimfohr and SquirrelPatrol coming in about 25 minutes or so at 11 o'clock. We still going to talk some receivers, going to talk some tight ends, talk some stacks. Should mention, by the way, we're showing off the, you see the SimLabs being shown off on the screen there by TJ. If you want access to SimLabs, you can get yourself Combo Premium. If you don't want to pay all that much for Combo Premium, you can get yourself Combo Light. Newest product gives you the power of simulation for a fraction of the price of other tools. Combo Light is less than $40, $39 and change. It includes our fabulous SimLabs lineup building tool, plus content from some of your favorite DFS analysts. Combo Light is not limited to just to one sport. It has the 4 big majors, MLB, NFL, NBA, right around the corner, PGA, essentially year-round. So get in on it. Check out Combo Light. Again, $39.99. If you don't want to fully break the bank there for all the access, have yourself give it a whirl as far as the Sims. Let's talk receivers, Bobby. You want to open up receivers? Most popular, and again, just kind of the ways. There's not a lot of bargains. I know we threw out some names, but not a lot of players under 5K that look all that. I don't have a lot of confidence in. That's why you're going to see. I think Trey Tucker is going to be pretty popular. We currently have him at 13%. I would take the over on that personally. Tolbert right there at 5K for Dallas. Just, the absence of Brandon Cooks on the, he's injured for the next 4 weeks plus. Drake London, of course, that game there against Carolina. That's currently our most popular projection ownership-wise for Atlanta, but not as cheap as he once was. He's now 6'7". That's the thing. You do well, you get baked up. You do poorly, maybe we'll knock it down a little bit. Not a lot. But, what is your read here, Bobby? Receivers, Feel free to go wherever you want to go. We've touched on a lot along the way, but who are we not yet focused on that you want to point out?
Yeah, CeeDee Lamb for me is the best play on the slate. Like, I'm just trying to get to as much CeeDee Lamb as possible. Terry McLaurin, I think, is very strong as well. I think an interesting pivot, and kind of talked about it on the top of the show, Jalen Polk at 3,600. I like Trey Tucker at 42. I think he's fine. But I think Polk's a guy that I'm going to take a stand on. I like Polk a good bit. Deontay Johnson is going to be someone that's popular, and I have a similar feeling with him to like Chuba Hubbard. Like, I don't think either of them like really burns me with their optimal score. So I'm looking at Xavier Legette at 4,900. Seen a lot of slot reps. It's a slot funnel. He's someone on the cheaper end that I like. Jaden Reed is a very strong play, in my opinion, for Green Bay. That's also a slot funnel situation. For Arizona, that's going up against Arizona. That's also a slot funnel. So I like Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks. Do we have confirmation on Christian Watson?
I think he's coming back. So
I think he's coming back.
It's going to be cluttered again. Yeah.
So for me, it would just be Reed then. Tolbert, I think, is someone interesting in that Dallas-Detroit game. If you don't want to go to Lamb, I think Tolbert's fine. I think Dak, CeeDee Lamb, Tolbert stacks are also fine. Yeah, that's pretty much. Rashad Bateman is someone who is popping for me at 4,100. He's in.
I really like him in large field stuff, or even
I like it too.
Stuff. Yeah.
I'm with, so I like Bateman a little bit. I prefer Bateman to Tucker, I think, if I had to choose. Yeah, Zay Flowers is another guy you could get to. Godwin, I think Godwin's just has a safe floor and some upside. He'd be my favorite receiver in the Tampa Bay passing game. And Darnell Mooney at 5,300 in the Atlanta-Carolina game, I like a good bit. Tank Dell as well. In Houston.
Zay Flowers is the number one guy right now, currently optimal versus projected ownership. Pretty interesting. The worst right now we have is Darnell Mooney. Let me ask the chat. Chat, tell me your favorite receiver under 5K. So not 5K, but under 5K. I see McConkey getting thrown out there at 4.9. Erik is touting Little Jordan Humphrey as the best value on the slate. Okay. Raymond McLeod doesn't feel great to me. I think it doesn't feel great to Shannon either. Yeah, just under 5K, the receivers is pretty murky. Tucker, I kind of like. What's interesting, Tucker is not being liked at all by the Sims, but DJ Turner is, that's an interesting pivot. I don't know what his floor is. Probably not good. What is DJ? I was looking at the receiving yard projections, the props. Leggett, 39.5. Which is a decent number, but now he's no longer 3K or 3, he's like 4.7. He's not cheap. If you really want to hold your nose and play someone in Carolina, I guess it could be Mingo, but don't feel good about that at all. But the other one that was thrown out there was Hutchinson, and his prop is 19 yards. Xavier Hutchinson, the wide receiver 3, the presumed wide receiver 3, but like he's going to be behind Diggs, behind Dell.
What is Polkstein?
It's a good question. I'll pull it up.
Because again, a lot of Polk love.
24.5. Our projection, for what it's worth, is over that. A median projection at 32 that I'm seeing on Scores and Odds. So we like the over on that number at 24.5 yards. I just haven't seen it this year. But like, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead. What do you got, Bobby?
I think Polk is like the sneaky tournament value play.
I threw Mingo out there. Bobby, you were talking about the Carolina guys. You were talking about Leggett. And Deontay Johnson obviously still in play plenty. Do you have any Mingo in your 150 set?
I do have some Mingo begrudgingly. I just don't think Mingo's that good.
Yeah. I mean, former first rounder or second, he was pretty high as far. That's probably why he's sticking around still. I think he was either a first or second round pick, if I'm not mistaken. Just has not quite got there. Let me see the names that people in chat are throwing out there. Michael Wilson, Aguilar, Yeah, Ladd's the most popular one. It's like Ladd and Ladd is going to be what we have about 20% or so. A little
I
bit
just
less.
hate that. I hate that game.
Same.
Yeah,
I really hate that game. That's like one of the least appealing fantasy games on the slate. I would hate to play Ladd into ownership.
Denver has one of the lowest numbers as far as projected plays. The Chargers, 63 projected plays. Denver 62.7. For reference, Detroit 67.3, Dallas 66.6, Arizona 66.6. So it might not seem like a lot, but 4 plays matter. Those 4 plays can make a difference for sure. As projecting at the pace of that game. What other names were thrown out here? Lil Jordan, Humphrey, myself, Noah Brown, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. Dortch or Chamber, Shepard. I think you talked about Shepard, right, Bobby, for Tampa?
I said McMillan. But it would just be like a toss in, and Baker stacks.
Yeah. It's just rough though. Yeah. Sterling Shepard, has he done anything this year? Not really.
He had a touchdown from Baker on the Island game where Kirk Cousins threw 500 for 500 passing yards, and they
one catch for 4 yards.
They were college roommates, so I mean.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I do remember that.
College teammates, whatever.
Yeah, I think I had his prop on the over for the night, and it did not get there. I actually did bet his over that night, and I was in on the narrative, and he scored a touchdown narrative, but not enough receptions and yards, unfortunately. Tim, what do you have as far as receivers? Who do you want to point out? I know Bobby ran down a whole bunch. Anybody want to focus on? Anybody off the board a little bit?
Yeah. So we all know that I'm super high on Dallas pass catchers, pretty much all of them. Love Jameson as like a run back. I don't think he's going to get much ownership, projecting for maybe 5% ownership. So I really like Jameson as a run back in a super, super amazing game environment. We talked about this Tennessee stuff, like Levis. I think DeAndre Hopkins at 5,100. I think he's a reasonable play at that price tag. He's going to be a pivot off of guys like Tolbert and guys like that. I think I just talked about how I don't really like this game, but I really don't mind Cortland Sutton at 5,300. I would much rather play him over Ladd for $400 more. We see the Sims, again, really likes Baltimore. Zay Flowers, 20% optimal rate, only going to be about 13% owned. So again, I think Sims is really baking in or seeing a lot of ceiling in that game. So I think, I know it's expensive, but like a Lamar or Zay stack, just a single, I think would be super interesting in tournaments.
Terry run back? You like Terry to run back?
McLaurin? Yeah. I mean, I think Terry's like the clear and obvious run back in that game. And I think that
Eckler,
game,
maybe?
Yeah, or Eckler. Yeah, so Terry's 64 and Eckler's 53, I think. 54. 56. Okay, yeah. So I guess it's probably Eckler. Would be my preferred run back. And I think you do need a run back in this situation for guys like Lamar and Zay to both get there. I think you need to get pushed. So I think having a run back in that game is pretty important. So I guess I think I'm just a little bit more bearish on the Falcons than what our projections have. Like, I know that could be a really bad take, but I think they're going to be a little bit overowned. And as you can see, Drake London is showing up with about a little bit of negative leverage. So Sims would agree that same thing with Mooney, huge negative leverage score on Mooney. So again, I think Sims kind of agrees, I guess, with what I'm saying is that Atlanta's going to be a little bit overowned. So yeah, I mean, definitely I'm sticking with my Dallas guys. I do like Bateman quite a bit as a pivot off of Tucker. I don't mind Polk. Bobby's going to sold me on Poke a little bit here. And then I think this the Philadelphia wide receivers, AJ Brown, coming back. I think he's going to go completely unowned. I think AJ Brown's super interesting. We have him at like close to 9%, which I don't even think he's going to be that high, but maybe he will be. I absolutely love like a one-off of AJ Brown. So I think he's super interesting at 7,800.
Like Cole Kmet with his second touchdown, 2-yard touchdown. So Cole Kmet season, 4 catches, 43 yards, 2 touchdowns in the first half, 14-3 Chicago. Is this going to be another coach getting fired in Jacksonville? I'm not sure. Maybe. Another coach in London where they don't let him get back on the plane. Maybe that could be that situation. They gave the old dreaded like vote of confidence. Khan gave the coaching staff a vote of confidence, but Jacksonville dropped to 1-5, which that'll be bad. And shout out to DJ Moore. He's now on the positive. He's got 7 yards receiving. So there you go. He's on the right track. All right. Anything else? Do you guys care? Are you guys? Is Russ possibly a threat to jump in and take over for Fields today because Russ is finally healthy? Is that affecting your considering rostering of Fields, or like if he's playing bad enough and that's a possibility, you're probably dead anyway? I guess is the thought process. Anybody?
I would not worry about that at all.
Yeah. Chat's talking about it.
That would not be good for our high stakes best ball team, guys. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, you don't want. I mean, when Russ takes the job over for you, that's a tough scene. The 2024 version of Russ is pretty rough these days. Okay, Tim, we got about 10-ish minutes until Squirrel and Erik jump on here. Tight ends. Let's talk about tight ends. Ferguson probably is going to be the most popular tight end that we're seeing right now. Big shock, Dallas. You like Dallas. You're talking about running triples with Dallas. I guess you're leaning into that chalk. You feel like it's good chalk. Tight end on the season has been pretty horrendous. But I think there's some pretty good spots. Bowers, in theory, is some good. You could make the argument they might need to stay in the block a little bit, which is kind of annoying. But, he's their best receiver, probably, almost definitely here. The absence of Adams, who knows if Beaver's going to play again for the Raiders. You get a different report every day. Schultz might get a bump in the absence of Collins. As a cheapie, Cade Otton, I guess. McBride, 5.7. I'm still waiting for the McBride game. It might be this week. And Laporta, just not, we have not seen a Laporta game, a ceiling game either. But the price is pretty fair at 5.5. What is and you guys can go back to Kraft if you want to, but it just feels like the path is a little trickier this week with Green Bay theoretically getting back all their receivers. Tim, tight ends, what do you got?
Yeah, so Ferguson's my favorite play in a vacuum, but he's getting super high ownership. So maybe you have to play him in like a unique way, like in a triple. I think Laporta is my favorite pivot. Same game. Love that game. Only projected for 3% ownership, $500 more than Ferguson. So I absolutely love Laporta in large field. No issue with Bowers at all. I still prefer Ferguson. If I was going to get different, I'd still take Laporta over McBride despite the similar ownership. And then if I was looking for some cheapies, Cade Otton's definitely, I would say the guy. And then if I was looking to absolutely completely punt the position,
Sanders.
Tavian Sanders. So yeah, at 2,600, that's if you want to like squeeze in some like ultra expensive like wide receivers, that's the guy you have to punt with. So really, and then so I leave it with that, my tight end pool.
Yeah, Tremble being out, I just think that punting tight end this week's a little bit, I don't want to say scarier. I just think the hurdles are a little bit tougher. I think that one of these guys, I think, is going to get there. But we kind of ran down, and we've seen weeks where none of them get there. But I don't think it's really
necessary. I don't think it's really necessary either to like full out punt it. Like I wouldn't honestly, like in cash, I wouldn't go under Cade Otton.
No, I don't think I go to Sanders in cash either. They're talking about Ian Thomas. Wait, they're saying Ian Thomas is activated. Yeah, we're projecting Sanders, for what it's worth, over 5 fantasy points, and that's not a great number, obviously, but that's the projection. And Thomas right around 2. This may change, but currently we have Sanders well ahead of Thomas. Well ahead, double but still with 5 points. Bobby, any thoughts here as far as these nonsense tight ends or some of your favorites?
Yeah, I think Ferguson's going to be good chalk, but I do think that there are players that can have scores that can beat him. Tim hit on Laporta. Too high is what Dallas plays majority, and Laporta traditionally crushes that schematically. David Njoku, someone at 4,200 that I think is going to go overlooked. Cleveland's getting both of their offensive linemen back that have been out. And an Njoku targets between the hashes, right? Or he can get deep too. Like I don't mind Njoku for some ceiling. Dalton Schultz, when Nico Collins is out, has pretty good splits. Don't mind him versus the Patriots. Trey McBride, just a ton of usage in that Green Bay offense. Zach Ertz is another one at 3,700. He'd probably be my favorite cheapie that I'd be willing to target. If you want to spend up, there's Brock Bowers, who I think is always in play. He's just a stud. Two guys that I think are going to go that I haven't heard talked about, and they're in the Washington-Baltimore game, is Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. Mark Andrews is currently 3,900. Likely, I don't know what's Likely's price. He's 4,500. Like maybe Mark Andrews seems like a play in that Baltimore game that I can get to at 3,900. Like look at the discount we're paying for him. Yeah, he's probably not the same player he was, but he still has a rapport with Lamar Jackson. So he's someone that I think I'm gonna boost a little in terms of his projection. And he makes it easy, like with guys like Andrews and Bateman, to get to a Jackson stack if you want to play Jackson. So, yeah, I think he's an interesting term in play. I haven't really heard anyone talk about him, and it's mainly because he like if we do the deep dive, he stinks at this point. But
what happened?
What happened? Yeah. But I can take a shot there and be okay with it. Also, Tucker Kraft, like Musgrave's still not in. We're trying to like pinpoint which Green Bay Packer receiver to target. My favorite's Jaden Reed with Watson coming back. But if Kraft's going to be like so much lower owned than Ferguson for 200 cheaper, like just play Kraft, or just get middle that ownership in some way. That's how I would kind of think about it.
Yeah, the Andrews thing, he did see 4 catches last time and 5 targets, but everybody for Baltimore got a ridiculous number because of 42 passes from Lamar. So typically he's not going to throw that many passes, obviously. But like you said, the price is there, and I guess maybe flashes of his former self. But there's a chance Lamar throws the ball 20 times today. That's possible. That's not what you're looking for.
We see Zay popping hard in the Sims though, so maybe the passing game is utilized more. That's the other thing is make sure if you're playing Zay and Henry that you're splitting them at most one, I would say, for Zay and Henry, because you're basically trying to figure out which game script it's going to be, whether it's going to be like a Henry game and then Zay hasn't really been productive in those scenarios, and then when it's a Zay game, Henry hasn't been as productive. So that's one rule I have is no more than one Zay or Henry.
Squirrel's going to be on in a few minutes. I heard him earlier in the week talking about, something I was thinking about too, like the Baltimore situation, like either Lamar or Henry, like one of them should smash. Either Lamar gets 4 touchdowns or Henry gets 2+, right? Like it just feels like what's their team total? 29, 30 or so. Biggest team total on the board. I was also thinking about maybe playing them both together. I know that's the correlation. Like Henry doesn't catch the ball. Every once in a while he does. But you get theoretically all the Baltimore touchdowns. Do you have any rules for that? And it's expensive too. That's the other issue, Bobby. It's like I like the idea. Also, Washington's kind of got to punch back a little bit if you're playing both. How are you? Is that something you've X'd out, or are you willing to play Lamar and Henry together?
I think you can play them together. I'm not currently. I just think a Lamar game script. I want the pass catchers, and like the Sims are showing that it's Zay and Bateman in that scenario. So that's who I'm going to be targeting. And also the tight ends. Do not forget that. I think if you play Lamar and Lamar's optimal, I think one of the tight ends will be optimal with Lamar. And I feel like the tight ends would be a negative correlation off of a guy like Henry, because if you're in the red zone and Mark Andrews gets a touchdown, it's capping. It's not Henry getting the touchdown, right? So
yeah.
And the opportunity cost at running back. So the more I look at this, it makes me want to play to boost. I like Lamar anyways. I'm playing him, but it makes me want to get more because I feel like everyone has the same narrative on Henry. And me and Tim both talked about at the top of the show, like Henry can sometimes be a very tough roster, right? Because if the game script goes away from him, it becomes a scenario where you're just dusted. And it seems like the whole industry wants to play Henry this week, and maybe you just play Lamar and the pass catchers.
Yeah. But like, I guess Washington could be up 27-10. I guess that's possible. It doesn't seem likely, but I guess that's possible. Like, what's the scenario where Henry kind of just gets benched? And we've seen it before where he gets benched, and they bring in Justice Hill. But that's when they're down, and I guess they could
they somehow get down 2 touchdowns, which isn't going to happen. But I mean, if they do, it's over. It's over for Henry, straight up.
Basically,
he's done.
Yeah.
Do we prefer Terry or Eckler as a run back in Baltimore stacks? Did you have an answer for that, Bobby? Donnie wants to know Terry or Eckler as a run back in your Baltimore stacks.
I think it's Terry. Like Terry's getting a ton of downfield targets. You can beat Baltimore deep. They're giving up a ton of fantasy points on deep targets. So for me, it would be Terry. I do think Eckler's a strong play, though.
TJ, let me know if and when Erik and Squirrel are here. Please give me that. Oh, there you go. I had a feeling they would be here. Yeah, I had a feeling they'd be hanging out, and they're just in the green room. And again, TJ can't get me green room access, so I don't know. I'm just blind to for some reason, I'm not allowed to look in the green room, but they are here. So let's just go ahead and bring them in. No Neil this week, but it is Erik and Squirrel. Here we go. Let's bring them in. Squirrel, we pumped about this game. You're a Washington fan, right? I believe you're a Washington fan. And Washington and Baltimore, you guys are geographical rivals. Do you not like Baltimore? Is there any sort of or indifference? What's the deal there?
Oh, I don't know. You have to go back into like the history of Washington football. Like for the most part, when the Washington football team was good, there were no Ravens to even think about. And then as Washington collapsed, like the Ravens came to town and were good and gave us like something to root for a little bit up north. I don't know. I'm married into the Maryland side of the Potomac River. So like it's a big battle for my household. But I call it like the Battle of BWI Airport. But I don't know, like I don't know really how much of a rivalry there is, just because it's like 2 different conferences and they only meet like once every 6 years or so, but it's fun for the area.
Is there a friendly wager in the household tonight?
No.
No friendly
my
wager.
wife's off at the pumpkin patch with my daughter. So
she doesn't care.
Be watching football.
Fair enough. They might have siphoned off some Washington fans when Baltimore came into existence. So yeah, I don't know where the actual line was drawn. That could have happened as well. Erik, what's up? How are things?
Wonderful. Just smashed a couple of donuts before we came on here, Dean, and we're getting ready. No, we're flannelless today. No Tim. Flannel takes. We're back to that's true. Tim had to fill the void of our resident flannel expert not being here, but I'm ready to rock and roll.
What about you? What's your bitterness? Because you were, I assume, you were a St. Louis fan at some point. Yeah. And they don't. My understanding, they don't exist anymore. Is that correct? You can confirm that.
Yeah, good. So everybody, that's a very loose term. A lot of people here have actually converted to Battlehawks fans in the XFL because there's still like a rampant, like they'll sell out the stadium sometimes for XFL. They have a pretty strong fan base.
Really?
Yeah, but that's how bitter St. Louis people are about the Rams, is that like we don't care how bad the football is. We're going to support whatever crappy league and team comes here because it was rough when the Rams got ripped away.
Who's your favorite Battle Hawk? Could you run off a name or two? Like that's somebody
they just had Akeem Butler. Okay.
Jordan Teamu was once upon the time the quarterback 2 years ago.
Okay. Those are players I've heard of. Shout out to the Battle Hawks. Hey, Bobby, let's just, before we step aside and get out of here, we never gave our favorite stack, our favorite, it could be a game stack. It could be just like one side and onside, however you want to do it, Bobby. The people want your favorite stack. What's winning all the money?
I think it's stacked to CeeDee Lamb.
Any run back necessarily or not necessary?
I would run it back. I feel like you can throw in Laporta, JMO, Amon-Ra, Gibbs. I just made a rule. Run back Dak with a Detroit player. So I had a question for Squirrel. Squirrel, which Baltimore tight end would you be interested in running, if any?
I know I'm a little bit down on both of them, but I
both
would probably go.
Who are the two? Kohler and Likely?
Oh yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
Charlie Kohler, man.
That is a good point, actually.
I forgot there's 3 lurking out there. Tim, Bobby really walked the plank. If you want to be just as ambitious, or maybe a little less ambitious if you want, can you see Dak to Lamb and raise him?
Well, no, I'm going a Dak triple. That's what I'm going with.
You're adding pieces.
Yeah, I'm going for a Dak triple.
And the pieces are pretty obvious as far as who you're adding?
Yeah. And then running it back with one of JMO, Montgomery, or Gibbs.
Well, hopefully PMR is the thing, because that's a 4:00 game. The league did it right this week. 6-4-1 on FanDuel. Of course, FanDuel, you get that Cincinnati and Giants game. Myself and Bobby and Tim, we asked you to hit that like button, but do not go anywhere because still 2 hours of nonstop NFL DFS conversation. SquirrelPatrol, Erik Beimfohr. They're going to be taking over about an hour or so. Then you get TJ, Will, and I believe TheLuuch. But for now, we appreciate y'all watching. And Beimfohr, take it away.
Yeah, shouts to the People Show, as always, and welcome to GPP Final Takes. We're back to GPP Final Takes this week. John, we'll revert back to GPP Flannel Takes when Neil is here. But thank you guys for joining us. I am, of course, this way, joined by John Breslin, a.k.a. SquirrelPatrol, a.k.a. one of the best DFS players on the planet. And John, there's a lot to get to today. We say this every year, but, injuries feel crazy, right? We'll do this every week 6, I think, for the rest of time. But there's a lot of impactful injury news, despite it being a 10-game slate. It feels like there's a lot to diagnose and a few really, really interesting, potentially, firework-laden games. So we'll get into all that. But if you've not joined us before on this Sunday morning show, thank you for joining us. We'll not necessarily go position by position. We're not necessarily going to go game by game. We're going to do a little bit of both of those things. We're going to answer your questions. So pop those in the chat throughout the whole show. I'll try to keep tabs on as many of them as I can. And we will try to hit all of the most notable final takes for tournaments, right? The most important players, someone's ruled out, which of course we have several of those, the most important games, your stacks, defenses, everything there in between. We'll try to get you all set up for your tournaments today, but try to lead in with a little, whatever the key subject is for this one. I'm curious actually as to what you kind of think about that, because we could pinpoint, okay, Rashad White is out, or I'm not saying this is the one, but right in other weeks, Brian Robinson is out, or X players underpriced, Nico Collins is out. But there's a lot of them and a couple of really, going to be very popular games, but also they should be, I think, games that are really exciting. So what are you kind of looking at first when you open up the slate?
Sure. So I have a whole philosophical thing on the slate. We've got 10 games on DraftKings, 11 on FanDuel. We have our 2 51.5 point games. So those totals stand out among the other games. So we have Dallas and Detroit. We have Washington, Baltimore. Then we have 2 47 point games on FanDuel. We have 3 47, 46.5 point total games. Everything else is the other 6 games are about 43 points and below. So then you have a bunch of injuries, right? Like, so you've got, Bucky Irving, you've got, actually on FanDuel, you have Devin Singletary's out and Malik Neighbors are out. So you have all the injury things you need to be like, thinking over in your head. You've got a bunch of guys out for the Raiders. So then it becomes this like battle, right? Like, you've got Spencer Rattler like starting for the Saints. So you've got this like battle between the injury created value and the high point total games that have like generally expensive players. And when you're running like optimal lineups, you are going into lineup HQ, like you click, build lineups. It's going to tell you that you want to be going for like a bunch of this injury created value, and you want to be going for some of it. Like, you can't create a lineup of all the most expensive players in the game. Like, but what I want to do as much as possible is like keep in mind we've got 2 games like a 52 point total that have like fairly close spreads. Like, these could be back and forth shootouts. Then we do, we have a couple of other games that like 47 points. They could shoot out, and so like think about that and try to make sure that I'm like got a lineup that makes sense. If it's a game stack if required, and that I'm not just like jamming in all of this value and just spending up on the same guys as everybody else.
I like that a lot, because I think it's become, we've talked about this several different times, but once we get a few weeks into the season, like you said, you get this injury created value or chaos created value or whatever, right? Guys get benched, like Bryce Young didn't get hurt. Andy Dalton comes in and it changes everything about the Carolina, right? Deontay and Chuba are going to keep getting played, as they should, I think, but they're going to keep getting played every single week because Andy Dalton creates a different projection than Bryce Young, and et cetera, on down the list. But we've treated it's becoming more like NBA, like you said. If I just go click, run me 150 lineups, the majority of them are going to be made up of, like you said, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, these guys I'm not slandering Bucky or the Bucks at all, but like when you look at that game and everything on the, in the grand scheme of this slate, it's like, it's like whatever. Like if I had to pick one to watch on the early slate, it's not Bucks Saints, right? So how do we create, because we need that. We need some of that to afford the Lamars and these type guys. But how do we create that balancing act where we're not just plugging and playing a point per dollar projection and ignoring kind of the upside needed to win tournaments, which often comes from a lot of points being scored because touchdowns are 6 points. So that's nice. Let's start with one of those games. Perfect segue from the People Show into I think the most notable game to talk about, the Ravens and the Washington. Your Super Bowl, as you said. What did you call it? The Battle of what?
Airport.
Okay, I like it.
I'm trying to think of like what could Washington and Baltimore be like battling over.
Right. That's good. So this one I think is more interesting than even some of the other games because you could play this like a million different ways, right? We have the 2 probably highest upside rushing quarterbacks in the NFL, but they're also pricey. They have somewhat clear target earners at wide receiver. Well, Zay Flowers, Terry McLaurin, the tight end stuff is weird as we discussed. But then, you have Derrick Henry who can go nuts in any given week. Austin Eckler, I think you and I both tagged him in lineup HQ. This was before the Bucky news, but I still really, really like Austin Eckler today. No Brian Robinson, right? Catches passes, perfect for DraftKings. So there's a lot of different ways you can go. How are you, what's your preference in terms of attacking this one?
I just want to be over the field on this game. I did write up like my favorite correlation is Derrick Henry and Terry McLaurin, and I think that's an interesting correlation to get to because I think that makes sense. Kind of from either perspective. Like McLaurin's maybe getting a few more passes if Derrick Henry is breaks off a long run first, or vice versa. Maybe Derrick Henry's even getting a couple more passes than we would expect if Terry McLaurin gets the long touchdown first. But those are 2 guys that get long touchdowns. Like I try to visualize what do I want to see at 1:30 at 2 p.m. right? What I want to see, I want to be watching like NFL Red Zone and they cut to one of my guys right running down the field. There's nobody else in the picture. Everybody's going crazy. And like Derrick Henry can do that. Terry McLaurin can do that. And like median projections don't always catch those players, right? You get a lot of Wan'Dale Robinson and Deontay Johnson or Chuba Hubbard.
Yep.
And those are guys that are going to be playing in my lineups, but they're not necessarily the running down the field guys, right? With nobody else in the picture. Like Terry McLaurin and Derrick Henry are. So those are guys that I think could end up being under-owned. and they correlate well together in a high total game. I like Austin Eckler. We need to talk about our lineup for the show, because I noticed we both tagged, I think, Austin Eckler, then we also both tagged Will Levis. So I don't know if you want that's where we want to be going. But could be a weird looking lineup. But yeah, so we have like Austin Eckler is a guy that could be getting more passes. I think Noah Brown is a guy that might be a little bit overlooked, and he could totally done, right? But he could also be the wide receiver 2 for the Commanders, and just it's a kind of combination of events, right? He's signed late in the season. He was injured last week. It could be the kind of thing where they've been trying to ramp him up, and he was just hurt last week. But now they're going to continue trying to ramp him up to be like the primary wide receiver 2 across from McLaurin. So yeah, I like the McLaurin. I like Derrick Henry. I like Noah Brown, Austin Eckler. I guess from the Baltimore side, I like Zay Flowers. I'll be playing a lot of Zay Flowers in my Lamar Jackson lineups. Not so high on the tight ends. I'd probably rather go to one of the wide receivers than one of the tight ends. But having said that, Mark Andrews is cheap, $3,900, I think. So I think it doesn't hurt you if he doesn't have a great game as much as it would have a few weeks ago. So yeah, I want to be over the field on this game because it's not a game that's necessarily popping off in optimal lineups. But it's a game that could be the highest scoring game of the day.
This is actually quite easily my favorite game of the day. I think the hard part for me is like you exactly led in with, I just want to be overweight this game as a person playing 1 to 3 lineups today. I'm yeah, me too, but I got to pick a couple of different avenues on how to attack this. And I mean, I could see it, let's start with Baltimore. I find it very difficult for Baltimore to not put up this. This reminds me somewhat of we'll say this sometimes, but it's not the same thing as the Packers last week, where they just had everybody was underpriced and really only Tucker Kraft got there. But again, somebody got there. It feels like that to me with the Ravens when they have someone that can push them at all, who also has a poor defense, which is the epitome of this Washington team. Is they're going to play fast, they're going to score points, and they have the second worst defense in the entire NFL. I struggle with the fact that I just don't see how all the Ravens fail today. And so again, I try to work down this kind of almost questionnaire to myself heading into one of these, and it's kind of starting with what are the games that I'm just holy cow, this game is amazing. And this one jumped out the most to me. We'll get to Detroit, Dallas. I have some issues with that one. But I also see, like you said, I see the Derrick Henry thing. I really like Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler now all of a sudden kind of has this funny, he's this new archetype of Austin Eckler, essentially, where he could get there if they're playing from ahead. But if he's playing from behind, he also can really get there because he's still Austin Eckler, the pass catcher. And that's really appealing to me. I really, really struggle with how to put this one together. I'm probably going to build a few different variations, and they're all going to have at a minimum combos of players in this game. I'm not saying it'll guaranteed have a quarterback, but I want to get to everybody, including Mark Andrews. I want to get to, I don't want to have 0% Mark Andrews. I know that sounds crazy. You look at all the routes, you could literally look at all the routes he runs because he doesn't run any routes hardly anymore. But that's not going to happen forever. I understand that it's maybe he's just a part-time guy for now. They're trying to win a Super Bowl. They need to win games. When they've been in games where they got pushed, he does have 5 targets in each of those games. That's not a lot, but it's not nothing. He should have scored a touchdown last week. So everybody in this game is appealing to me. And like you said, I think from an ownership perspective, it's a lot of all the other games are the ones coming in with ownership, which just really puts the cherry on top of this one.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a great game to get to. I did talk about on my show with Game to Win about maybe having every roster. Like I said, I think I was thinking maybe 80% of my rosters could have either Lamar Jackson or Derrick Henry, and JM was I think I'm at 95%. But I will probably end up with less than 80%, cumulative ownership. But I don't know why. It's maybe the thing. It's more I don't know how to explain other than it just doesn't feel right. I guess maybe there's an 80% chance that the game hits. So there's 20% chance that the game totally busts, and then maybe there's a 20% chance that the game hits, but somehow Lamar and Derrick Henry both, get priced off the winning lineup. So I don't think it'll be like 80% total ownership, but I can't explain why I'm not doing that.
A good question from Steven Smith. He says, when you say all the Ravens could get there, which ones are you referring to? And this is the great point, and this is why they're not popping quite as much as some other players from a projection or point per dollar. Their projections are fine. Their projections are more than fine. It's a point per dollar issue, which is what Steven says. I don't really like any of the, like the prices on Baltimore. Henry and Lamar are fine, but like he's like, I like them. But again, you have the most expensive quarterback, and on DraftKings, the second most expensive running back in Derrick Henry, and he doesn't really catch passes. That's kind of why I like it all. So another thing about this slate, setting aside this game, maybe a little bit of a segue, but using Lamar and Derrick Henry as an example, is you can have whatever you want on this slate. There are no pricing issue. Like this is like an NBA DFS slate in February where like a bunch of guys are out. It's like, there is a salary cap. If you want to play Lamar and Henry and stuff, you're going to get funneled into certain guys, whether it's Bucky or Eckler or, whoever, but like, there's no problems fitting whoever you want into a lineup. And so I want the lineup to tell the story, I think, about this slate while looking at the ownership of that. I don't want to just jam CeeDee Lamb because everybody else is playing whatever, Bucky and, all these other cheap guys. I could play Lamar or Derrick Henry or Saquon Barkley or AJ Brown, or like, there's so many ways that you can get unique, because I never really feel pressed in terms of the salary cap this week.
Yeah. And I guess one of the reasons I'm also high on this game, like both these teams have been involved in some massive shootouts. But like also week. They both played Cincinnati. So that may be like part of the reason why. But like we looked at this game last week, this Baltimore Cincinnati game, and we thought, oh, it's like a great game environment. It's just too expensive. Like it's too hard to get there on a point per dollar basis. But we don't like the scores aren't like calculated like point per dollar. It's just most points. Mm-hmm. We all have the same we all have the same salary cap. And as you get more and more injury news and more injury value like popping up throughout the week, then it becomes easier to get this game. But we've already looked at the schedule in the middle of the week, Thursday, Friday, before a lot of this value like popped up or was confirmed. And so we tend to like, well, I know I need to get to like the Atlanta Carolina game because that's like the better, like that's the game I can afford. It's a fine game. That's a fine game environment. But it's maybe not the absolute peak game environment. Like last week, that peak game environment was Baltimore and Cincinnati, and you just had to find a way to get there. And it actually looked much better on Sunday than it did on Friday because of all the injury news that popped up.
Right. That's how I last week just ironically happens to be with one of the teams in this game, and happens to be, like you said, the team that they both slaughtered. They both absolutely destroyed that defense, that Cincinnati defense. But it feels just the same to me as last weekend. I did okay last week, but I didn't stack that game up, and it was like it just like nothing, like you said, like literally nothing mattered. It's like if you didn't have the Burrow double with some, if you didn't attack that game, like I made a good team that scored plenty of points. It was just there was one situation that I scored more points than all the rest of them, and so to that question, I think that's actually like I'm glad it was asked, because it's like a really important element of this like NFL DFS season, as it like. There is no $10,000 Christian McCaffrey getting 35 touches a week. Tyreek Hill doesn't have Tua. He's not playing this week, but there's no Tua. CD isn't quite CD, right? There's Justin Jefferson is like fine, but is he like you want to spend $9,000 on him? And there's just not really that like mega high end. So it trickles down into this conversation about like price be damned. Is this the game that you have to have this week? And I feel decent about this being the game that you have to have. Spidey Bombs asks, do we know if Flacco is starting? I don't believe we've gotten like official word, but we should in a minute on Anthony Richardson. But all the signs all week and last night where Anthony Richardson is going to play and start for the Colts. So it takes a little. It's crazy that the really exciting young rookie takes all the shine off of a game, but Joe Flacco does that. One more question, Dexter in the chat with a UNC North Carolina Tar Heels avatar. Definitely no bias. He says, disregard my logo. But Drake May starting today. So maybe we can talk a little bit about some of the cheap quarterbacks as alternatives to the Lamar and Daniels. Drake May plus 240 to throw for 200 yards. Spend your money how you want. That's what I'll tell you. I'm not gonna say no. You're a fan. Go ahead, root for your buddy. But this feels like. Does anybody remember the first Johnny Manziel game for Cleveland? It was bad. He was in a bad matchup. He had no talent around him, and he's running around throwing interceptions and taking sacks and all that kind of stuff. I like Drake May, but feels like a tough spot today. He is, however, cheap for DFS. Spencer Rattler, another rookie quarterback, is very cheap for DFS. You mentioned you and I both have Will Levis tagged. Andy Dalton is just a little bit more expensive. There are cheap options if you want to be able to afford some of those expensive skill players. Where are you looking at amongst those cheap quarterbacks?
Okay, so we both have Will Levis tag. We should start that.
I would like to take that one back, I think.
Yeah. I think there's an argument to be made for him, and he has some leverage off of like Tony Pollard in a weird way. And I do think that our perception of Tennessee might be a little bit skewed because the last game, they've only played 4 games. The last game they played was against Miami, and they just did not need to pass the ball. And Levis got hurt. So they had Mason Rudolph in there against Tyler Huntley, who could not connect with his wide receivers because he had just signed the week before with the team. So they just Tony Pollard got 22 carries, but Tyjae Spears got 15. They just ran the ball. So I think we might be a little bit over the field. I guess we may be too high on Tony Pollard and not high enough on the Tennessee passing game. The Tennessee passing game still exists. They've got some decent wide receivers. They've got Hopkins, Ridley. They can potentially be passing in this game against this mediocre Colts defense rather than just running Tony Pollard. It's not necessarily going to be just the Tony Pollard show. So I do like Levis in that sense. I would probably say I more want to be over the field in long, large field play than he's the guy I need to get to. I don't know. I don't know that I necessarily want to be over the field on Spencer Rattler or Drake May. Drake May seems like he's in a bad situation. Anything's possible. This offensive line doesn't look good. I don't know. Jacoby Brissett's actually not that bad of a quarterback. Yeah. I don't know that Drake May's going to come in for his first NFL start.
He's got to be Superman. He legit has to be like Superman. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to probably play a good amount of Jalen Polk, at 3,600, and maybe that's where I'm getting some of my Drake May exposure.
Yep.
I will say that Andy Dalton's only 5,200, and he's in one of these games we want to target. It doesn't make sense to be I've got to get Chuba Hubbard into my lineup, and I have to get Deontay Johnson into my lineup, and then just be totally skipping over Andy Dalton at 5,200. And I really like Xavier Legette as well. I don't know. I kind of want to be under the field on Rattler, assuming he's going to get pretty decent ownership. I think 5% is fine. I don't really want to, and I guess at 4,000, if you can make a lineup that makes sense, for Singletary, it's okay. It's just I think he's going to be overrun. He might see a lot more ownership than we're expecting, just because the appeal of the $4,000 quarterback. But you need to get points out of your quarterback position, not just points per dollar.
That's what goes back to the conversation that we just had about pricing and all that kind of stuff. From a point per dollar perspective, any $4,000 quarterback, the Saints have been fine on offense, although they've kind of collapsed over the last 3 weeks. The offensive line is a disaster, but there's a reason to play those guys. Anybody that's a $4,000, right? It's a $3,000 starting center in the NBA. It's whatever. He's probably gonna get a double. So who cares? I don't care that he stinks, but it's just not.
These guys always foul out though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's got 4,000. His second rotation, and you're like, oh god. But that feels like Spencer Rattler. And he hands it off, throws a couple picks, and they're ready to get out of Dodge. Earlier in the week, again, we didn't have Bucky then. We didn't have a Brian Robinson ruled out then. We didn't have some of these situations earlier in the week, and I was like, get Rattler to go, you can get Derrick Henry and you can get, all these things that you want with them. It's I don't need him to get Derrick Henry. I can play Lamar and Derrick. I don't want to play them together, but I'm I can play Lamar and fit Derrick Henry now. I don't need Spencer Rattler. So the raw points problem, I think, is coming into play with all of these cheap guys. Levis is still my favorite because I think the Colts nobody ever seemingly wants to attack this Colts defense, right? Every week, Justin Fields went nuts on these guys. Trevor Lawrence went nuts on them. It's just he kind of ran bad on some touchdowns late. it was a little bit better when they had Joe Flacco other than Anthony Richardson. But I don't think it's crazy. Like you said, I think like if I were making 150, I would be overweight Will Levis, however many teams that means. And I prefer DeAndre Hopkins. Also wanted to toss Jatavian Sanders into your Panthers mix. Another like feather in the cap of that game. It's gross, but Tommy Tremble is out. He's a 2,600. If I'm going to spend down for the shitty rookie, pardon my French, at one of the positions, give me the $2,600 tight end on the Carolina Panthers as opposed to the $4,000 quarterback on the New Orleans Saints.
Actually, I think that makes a lot of sense. And Sanders is a guy, like, I never would have brought him up. I'm like too embarrassed to bring him up. But he is a guy that was like showing up in a lot of my lineups. I was like running this morning, just like, kind of draft lineups. And I think that makes much more sense because there's so little opportunity cost at tight end, right? And that's the thing. Like at quarterback, like one of these quarterbacks is going to go crazy. Like maybe Lamar Jackson does have a bad game. Well, like the chances like Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, like Jaden Daniels, all these guys have bad games is just not that high.
Joe Flacco is starting.
Oh, okay. Thank you, TJ.
Okay.
Wow. Some drama in Indy. I can't believe Richardson is back, but we'll get to that in a second. You can finish your thought.
Oh, I don't know. Now, was it talking about Sanders? Yeah, the opportunity cost of tight end is just not that high. So, like, there is actually a decent chance, like, if Jake Ferguson doesn't do well and Sanders gets a touchdown or just 4 or 5 receptions, suddenly, like, at 2,600, he is competitive to be the tight end in the winning line.
I also think that let's do that game. Let's do Falcons, Carolina, because I think there's a lot to discuss on this one. I agree with you kind of nailed it. The overall game environment here is not as good as a couple of the others, but the Panthers defense is so bad. Like everybody gets home against Carolina, other than the Raiders. Okay, shout out to the Raiders. They got destroyed by this Panthers team and couldn't move the ball. Everybody gets home against DeAndre Swift and Roshan Johnson and DJ Moore and Caleb Williams. Like everybody got home last week. And so now you got the Falcons. And of course, from a DFS perspective, they're fresh off of the game when they threw it like 60 times. They scored a bunch of points. So everything looks even more appealing. But I think just even ignoring that one, Bijan is off the injury report. Although I guess has been dealing with this hamstring thing. Hasn't popped yet. Drake London and Darnell Mooney leading the wide receiver room. You still, of course, have Kyle Pitts at tight end. Don't let the Kyle Pitts targets, though, if you're just listening to this, like, oh my God, he had 8 targets. Like, well, he was 4th on the team in targets. Like they just threw it 60 times. But this game looks appealing. Condensed, 1 bad defense, 1 mediocre defense in a dome. What do you think about Carolina and Atlanta?
I think the game's fine. If I'm playing this game, I probably want to like game stack it. Like that's not like it's a good like point per dollar game. I'm playing some one-offs in the game. It's kind of unavoidable. Just so often like you end up and Chuba Hubbard is like the best running back for the price, or Deontay Johnson's the best wide receiver for the price. I don't know. I do think it might be over-owned, so I just gonna have to take a risk and take some of this ownership. It's maybe going to the pieces from this game, and if I want more Terry McLaurin, I probably have to have less like Deontay Johnson.
Yeah,
and if Deontay Johnson it kills me, then it's just not my weekend. I do say that I like Bijan Robinson probably the best from this game. Like that's the guy I'm most interested in being like over the field on DraftKings. I think he's like the 8th or 9th most expensive running back on DraftKings at this point. So we're forgetting how cheap he is. He's the 4th most expensive running back on FanDuel. And like he doesn't he catches passes too, so it's not like it's he just scores better on FanDuel.
He's good. He's a good and high volume pass catcher.
Yeah. So like he scores well for DraftKings, and it's odd that he's like so cheap on DraftKings relative to FanDuel. So I'm getting a lot of my Bijan Robinson exposure on DraftKings. And there's another game on FanDuel as well. So like there's like more running back competition on FanDuel this week. So I like Bijan Robinson the best, but like Chuba Hubbard's still underpriced. Like Deontay Johnson's still underpriced. I do like the idea of maybe getting to more Xavier Legette and less Deontay Johnson, just to take that money and kind of spread it out elsewhere. Like I'd rather take some like Deontay Johnson ownership and maybe spread it out to like Jameson Williams for a few $100 less, or up to Terry McLaurin or Zay Flowers for a little bit more And I don't love Drake London either. I mean, he's good, right? And like if I'm playing Kirk Cousins, like I probably want to get Drake London into that lineup. And I will be playing some Kirk Cousins. Like I want to play some game stacks from this game. It's just the general feeling that like I don't know that I want to be playing a ton of Drake London. Like I don't know that I want Drake London to be my highest owned wide receiver that I'm playing as a one-off, right? In game stacks from other games.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. A couple of questions, and the first, Dean is gotta be needling me with no one cares about Kendre Miller, okay, except best ball people, because I loved Kendre Miller and he is a walking meme from the whole summer of Dennis Allen just slandering this kid all week, not pulling any punches about how bad he is and how he needs to stay healthy. And he's off the IR, but he is not active today. So don't worry. We're not going to talk anymore about Kendre Miller, but Christian Watson
just got a touchdown, by the way.
Gabe did? Hey, okay, yeah. That's nice. Doug Peterson may not. I turned the game off when it went 21-7. So maybe Doug Peterson won't get fired just yet. We'll see. I see your question, Shiv. We're going to segue into that one, but I want to talk about the Joe Flacco thing first, and fun with, I don't know if that's Al or AI, but Al sounds funnier. Fun with Al. Christian Watson is also playing kind of a shocker there. Romeo Doubs back, so now the Packers are pretty much at full strength. Sans Luke Musgrave. Joe Flacco, though, tougher matchup this week with the Titans. Certainly a much less sexy game environment. Michael Pittman was headed for IR, and now he's playing today, like the opposite of the news we usually get at this time of the year. But as we've seen, Joe Flacco really can unlock some of the guys on this offense. No Jonathan Taylor. Is there any more interest in, the Josh Downses, Alec Pierces of the world for you with this news?
Not really. Tennessee allows the least amount of yards on defense. Of any team in the NFL. They've only played 4 games. One of them was like that game against Miami, where Miami just couldn't move the ball. But still, it's not a defense that I'm particularly interested in attacking. So, and like the Colts are on the road. It maybe actually does give it a boost to Tony Pollard in the.
I was gonna say Pollard, like Hopkins, stuff like that, if they can get some pushback.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. It doesn't like change a bunch of my life. Like I wasn't playing a bunch of Anthony Richardson. I don't expect to play a ton of Joe Flacco. I would be more inclined to like play multiple receivers with Flacco than with Richardson. But overall, it's just not getting to a ton of the Colts.
I think I agree with that. I don't hate the idea of some flyers on an Alec Pierce or a Josh Downs. Josh Downs is going to get targeted a ton, but then Alec Pierce is going to get the shot plays, right? So to your point of, I'm turn on red zone, I'm watching that guy run for a 70-yard touchdown. Somehow Alec Pierce has become the poster boy for that. Every time he's out there, the guy just catches a deep ball. So I'm not going to be stacking that game in like my main lineup, but I don't think it's like crazy to have a guy from each side in that game or whatever, however you want to play it. It's a little more appealing with Joe Flacco. The question from Shiv and somebody else was asking about Daniel Jones, another cheap quarterback in the mix on FanDuel, of course, not on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, this game is like kind of awesome. I can't believe a Giants game without Malik Neighbors and Devin Singletary. I'm saying that about, but they carved up Seattle last week. Tyrone Tracy looked good. Wan'Dale, Darius Slayton was excellent. Theo Johnson at tight end got some more targets. And then on the Cincinnati side, everybody carves them up and they're at full strength and crushing on offense. So what do you think about that in terms of the key differences? Shiv was asking. The key differences are this game is awesome for FanDuel. So there's a lot to get into.
Yeah, I'll just say that. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to drop down below Daniel Jones a lot at quarterback on FanDuel, because you really don't need to. You generally have like more money to spend on FanDuel kind of than DraftKings. So Daniel Jones is like, he projects well. He's only 6,800, so there really just isn't a need to. I guess I'll probably get a couple of like Will Levis rosters in there. And he's 6,600, but Levis is probably not as good of a play on FanDuel as he is on DraftKings. The big difference I think between FanDuel and DraftKings is that this game, this Giants Cincinnati game is available, and Tyrone Tracy is going to be in there. Wan'Dale Robinson is going to be in there. Like these guys are kind of mispriced on the main slate for the injuries that the Giants have had. So yeah, I like the idea of getting to some Giants, and I like running it back with Jamar Chase, obviously, if you can. Yeah, I guess like Bijan's a little bit too expensive, I think, on FanDuel. J.K. Dobbins is a little bit cheaper on FanDuel that relative to DraftKings, and scores better potentially on FanDuel. So yeah, some differences, but I think the biggest one is the addition of the Sunday night game.
Yeah, and then just to add onto that, you guys probably already know this, but I personally like Derrick Henry a little bit more on FanDuel, right? Like just the half PPR versus PPR element. You guys probably get that. A lot of it pertains to running backs. Wandale, right, like you said, is generally a better DraftKings play than a FanDuel play. I do like the point chasing. Call it point chasing. I do like Darius Slayton again for the New York Giants quite a bit on FanDuel. I think he's just like a good football player. Like Darius Slayton is like just the best tasting oatmeal you've ever had in your entire life. It's like, nobody gets excited for it. You don't wake up and be like, I got to have that for breakfast. But once you had it, you're like, not bad. You're like, like that was fine. And that's Darius Slayton. It's like, nobody gets excited for it, but he just it gets the job done every single time when he's needed without Malik Neighbors. So the Bengals, rough scene for the Bengals defense, which is good for fantasy.
Yeah. I was actually throwing another FanDuel thing at tight end. Like Jake Ferguson's really underpriced on DraftKings. Yeah. He's not really underpriced on FanDuel. So it's a little bit easier to get to some of the other tight ends. So again, on DraftKings, like if I'm starting a lineup, I might even start it with Jake Ferguson. Like he might end up my highest player on DraftKings. On FanDuel, it's not as necessary that like you need to go in and like jam Jake Ferguson into your lineup.
Yep. So that's perfect. Well, I want to hit this question from K-Town's Finest. I love you. This is some really galaxy brain stuff you got going on here. Is a trio on DraftKings, so I think this is a little more fitting, of Tyjae Spears, Tyler Algier, and Jeremy McNichols playing the three backup run. And a backup's a mean word, right? They're going to play, they're going to play their 30 or 40% of the work. Plus then, right, so using that savings to spend up for all those guys. I think I would pick one. I don't think it's crazy to be like, McNichols is going to play next to Eckler, right? Bijan's had the hammy thing. What if Algier plays? I get it to be like, play one of those guys. All three of them, like not only just like outproducing their starter, but winning a DFS tournament on a slate like this, I think is a little rough. But anything on those three guys?
Yeah, I mean, just keep in mind, like Tony Pollard's only 6,000. So. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't necessarily go in and think you need to like jam in these, $5,100 guys. Like Bucky Irving's only 5,400. And he might be the primary guy. Like McNichols and Eckler are probably gonna have to like split work a little bit. Like if I'm playing Austin Eckler, there's a good chance I've got Bucky Irving on that team already. And so I'm, spending 5,400 and 5,600 or whatever. Like Bucky Irving is a guy I would prefer over Austin Eckler. And I think that the running back exposure, other than Bucky Irving, might be somewhat spread out. Like I think at first we were going to get a ton of Tony Pollard, but then when Rachaad White is not going to be in, well, now we're going to get a ton of Bucky Irving. And I like the Bucky Irving play a lot more than the Tony Pollard play, in part just because he's cheaper. And so, but it's going to now all of that ownership is going to kind of like disperse amongst a few different guys. So you're not necessarily getting a ton of leverage by playing like Tyler Algier, because it's like. Bijan Robinson's not going to be as highly owned because a lot of that ownership is now going to go to Bucky Irving.
Yeah, if Bucky didn't exist, that question could be like a little bit of a more fun. We might have gotten really high Bijan ownership as an example to your point, and then we could say like, well, he has he's had the hamstring thing. We could really talk ourselves. I mean, Roschon scored 2 touchdowns, right? Roschon scored 2 touchdowns last week. Like Algier could get a little more run, blowout, whatever. We could talk ourselves into it, but it's kind of like, what's the point? What's the point in really galbraining all that stuff? I do want to talk about Bucky, but let's do. You mentioned Jake Ferguson and the next kind of most important game, highest expected scoring game, whatever. I actually think it's interesting to talk about these two things because I have more concerns about Detroit Dallas as a game environment and about Bucky as a DFS play than I have about like a lot of the other stuff we talked about, right? It's kind of like which Raven, I don't really know, but I feel good about the Ravens. Which commander, which Falcon, right? Which whoever. I feel good about that. I'm not saying I can pinpoint the guy, but I feel okay about it. It's not that I don't think that Detroit and Dallas is going to have plenty of points. It's actually that I think Detroit is going to lay the smackdown on Dallas here today, which is like, yeah, you're probably going to get the shot at Dallas garbage time and plenty of passing, but also like, man, what if the Lions just run it down their throats all game long because this Cowboys defense is ravaged by injuries and it wasn't good anyway. And that's what Detroit wants to do. So do you have any, concerns about this game? Because I wanted to bring those up before we dive into all the different plays, because I cannot get this out of my head with all these Dallas injuries and how bad the defense is. And just that plays into the strength of the Lions and what they want to do.
Yeah, I like this game a lot. I think it is a game that shapes up. We think it's going to be a lot of Dallas passing. And if it's not, I'm more willing to just say, well, it's not my week. Because I do think that like they're probably not going to try to run the ball. Like this is kind of a strength on weakness matchup, if that makes sense. Like,
yep, on both sides.
Detroit
on both sides, yeah.
And so, and all Dallas can do is pass. So, it probably shapes up as they're just going to be passing a lot. CeeDee Lamb is a little bit expensive, so that does give me some pause, right? Like, so what if Detroit is controlling the ball, and so then maybe CeeDee Lamb's not getting there at his price. Like, I think he is the most expensive wide receiver by a pretty big margin, and the next highest is also in this game on Ross St. Brown. So that's the player I'm like a little bit concerned about is CeeDee Lamb, but like Tolbert and Ferguson are just too cheap. And especially like Ferguson with like so little competition at the tight end spot. Like Dallas is going to be passing. And like Dallas can even not have that much success passing. But if like Ferguson gets 8 receptions, it maybe doesn't matter at the tight end position if 100. So I want to probably be at the field or over the field on this game. It is getting tougher to like fit CeeDee Lamb into my lineups as I want to like spend up on the running backs. And I this is actually a slate where I'm going to be playing a lot of the running back value, but I think I'm going to be pairing a lot of that running back value with other expensive running backs, not necessarily the expensive ones.
Yeah, because everybody else is going to play the cheap running backs and then get right. Yeah. How do you get CeeDee Lamb? How do you get the CD like Dak, CD, Amon-Ra bring back? How do you get that? Well, a couple of those cheap value running backs. What about the Detroit side? I could not possibly agree more. Zero interest in Rico Dowdle and the running game. Brandon Cooks still out. Jake Ferguson, to me, looks like the best tight end on this slate. He just has like the perfect combination of high floor and high ceiling, where it's like I don't need the ceiling game to win a tournament with him. I could get like a mediocre game and win a tournament with him. But if I get the ceiling, you get the playoff game from last year against the Packers, like 3 touchdowns and 9 catches or whatever it is, and he just destroys everybody. The Detroit side, though, is the one I think is going to score the most points, or just be able to kind of dominate this game, which is going to lead to the Dallas passing. But I also struggle with who to play because they shout out David Montgomery, got a contract extension yesterday. So we're going to get the deal with Gibbs and Monty for like 3 more years. Laporta doesn't look great. Amon-Ra is very expensive. JMO's whatever. What are you doing with the Lions?
Actually, like David Montgomery, maybe the most, or he's the guy that I want to be the most over the field on. I think we're showing him like single digit ownership. About 5.5% ownership. He's got like I think the 4th best touchdown odds on the slate, and like he maybe needs more than he's about the same price as Bijan Robinson, so he maybe needs more than a touchdown. But like the guys with the best touchdown odds tend to be the guys with the best 2 touchdown odds. Right. So I like the idea that maybe Detroit is just running the ball here. I'm probably not going to be going crazy with the Detroit guys. Just like Amon-Ra's, again, kind of expensive. And like he doesn't necessarily have those like monster games. Like he's a very solid play, but he doesn't necessarily have a monster game.
Old school Keenan, right? Kind of like old school Keenan.
Yeah, exactly.
Last year Keenan. I'm saying this because Keenan just scored a 2nd touchdown.
He's having a monster game.
Yes, he's a Keenan monster game. But it's like that's the light bulb was like he feels Keenan-y. So it's not impossible. It's just pretty unlikely.
Well, yeah, it is like $8,200 price tag. But I don't mind him. And if I'm playing Dak, then there's a good chance I'm going to be playing Amon-Ra. If I'm playing Goff, then there's a good chance I'm going to be playing Amon-Ra St. Brown. But you should consider like Jameson Williams too, or Sam Laporta. Like maybe it's a game where they're getting Laporta more involved. Overall, though, I just like David Montgomery seems like he's always underpriced. For a guy that can like pretty easily score 2 touchdowns. I think he's got a touchdown every game this season. So I don't know. I like the idea of getting to David Montgomery, and you're kind of hoping for 2 touchdowns, not 1, but it's feasible. It's within his range of outcomes, like pretty solidly. So Montgomery's probably the guy I want to be the most over the field on.
Yeah, to your point about the touchdown odds, I was trying to think through combining that like for a DFS perspective. What we really want is the 100 yards to get the bonus and 2 touchdowns out of David Montgomery. Catch a couple passes, cool. But if you get the 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, and I'm just thinking, like, again, using the order, I'm like, how many players on this slate have a better shot at that than he does? Like Derrick Henry, Bijan, Barkley, endless. So it's like, he's going to be unowned. And I know that the more goes into it than just odds of 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. But like, I mean, it can be a potentially exploitable opportunity. This guy's in the best spot to rack up rushing production, and no one's going to play him.
Yeah, he's got better odds for 2 touchdowns than Bijan and Barkley.
And Barkley, wow.
Bijan and Barkley. Yeah, I think Barkley's at like 450 or something, and David Montgomery's at like 330.
Wow, 330 for 2 touchdowns. Okay, maybe I need to play.
Barkley's at 340.
So about the same.
Yeah, about the same.
That's crazy.
Bijan 425, David Montgomery to 330.
They must have boosted his odds. Everybody started betting him when he got his contract extension. His narrative season. So he went from 4th all the way up to 2nd. Any JMO? Javon wants to know about JMO.
Jameson Williams?
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. I do like him. He's always underpriced. He's one of those guys. Again, he's a turn on NFL red zone. He's the guy running down the field, taunting the cornerbacks or whenever gets a penalty.
The anti-PPR.
It's okay, as long as I get the fantasy points.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that is not played. Like he's bad, like median outcome, right? Like he might totally dud, but he might get 160 yards too. So I do like him.
I like him more than Amon-Ra in tournaments, if that's great. I like him also in the stacks of this game, where it's like you want that guy, we'll call it the red zone guy. Because we have our PPR scams and we have our red zone guys, because they're the opposite, right? Wandale and Jameson Williams, very opposite ends. But like that's what I want if I played the Dak side, right? Is like open this puppy up, catch an 80-yard touchdown, because then we're coming right back on offense. We're losing. We got to throw more. It's like boom, boom, boom. More Ferguson targets, more CD targets. We didn't talk a lot about Jalen Tolbert. He is priced up to $5,000 on DraftKings, but are you still into Jalen Tolbert at a little bit elevated price?
I am. I have him tagged. Okay, you don't have him tagged. But I do like him. He's too cheap.
I think I had him tagged and then swapped him out, if I recall.
Okay. Now boot him from the show lineup for the Listener League. I do like he's underpriced for like Brandon Cooks being out. I might be a little bit like swayed because I did like one best ball team and I've got him on it. I think he was like my last round pick. So go Jalen Tolbert. Make up for like Rashee Rice, Devontae Adams. So I do like Jalen Tolbert though. Like he's just a good young player that he's get more opportunity now with Brandon Cooks out. And that's a little bit too cheap. Like I don't know that I want to go berserk with a bunch of Jalen Tolbert like one-offs, but I do like it makes perfect sense with Dak in place of like CeeDee Lamb. Like think about how much less at 5,000 Jalen Tolbert can do than CeeDee Lamb has to do at like 8,600. So
100%.
Yeah, I like Tolbert.
100%. So let's talk about kind of the next, probably not the last, but the main pillar for tournaments that we haven't gotten to that I imagine most people thought we might start with. But I want to talk about more of the fun stuff, and that is Bucky Irving. Rachaad White is out today for the Bucs. They are also playing the Spencer Rattler-led New Orleans Saints. Similar to what we talked about with like Detroit, where I could see this game getting, not this game, where I could see the Bucky play. Like it, I don't think there's any way it's like, oh my God, Bucky scored 2 points outside of injury. Like I certainly think, he's fine and he's probably going to have a decent game. He's a good player, but I could also see this thing going a little more awry. And like, there's a lot of running backs I like. We just mentioned 4 guys who all have better odds to do, to have this monster game than he does. And it's not the world's best matchup. It's fine. It's not the world's best matchup. I don't expect that he's going to like just become Christian McCaffrey because he's like 180 pounds. Like, he's going to get more work, unquestionably. But like, he was not getting that much work before. Now, well, what are we talking about here, right? Like, I don't know what the answer is, but I know that the result is going to depend on, did he get 24 touches or did he go from 11 touches to 16 touches? You know what I mean? It's one of those weird things, and this game is kind of gross. It does make me want to be under on Bucky. Also using our SimLabs tool. If you would like to look at some fun stuff in SimLabs in terms of ownership, like efficient ownership, how likely is this person to be optimal versus their projected ownership? I haven't refreshed, so sorry if this needs to be updated. Bucky Irving was 18.3% over-owned. The second highest, most over-owned running back was J.K. Dobbins at 8%. So he's like 2 times more popular, or 0.5 times, 50% more popular than he should be. But it's a good play. But he's also like a good play. So what do you think about Bucky in tournaments?
Actually, I really like him a lot. you're saying a bunch of negative stuff. He's negative leverage.
Got to.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Bad cop, good cop. Bad cop, good cop. Yeah.
It's hard to. He's the guy that it's hardest to get away from. There are paths to failure, but I'm playing more like Bucky Robinson probably than any other player on DraftKings. I haven't looked as much on FanDuel, but I think I'll still be probably playing a ton of on FanDuel as well. Because he's too cheap. This wasn't Rachaad White being out, wasn't priced in. Bucky Irving was outperforming Rachaad White. Rachaad White's actually another guy I got on that Rashee Rice, Devontae Adams best ball team for what it's worth. But anywho,
this is why you like Bucky even more too. You're like, oh my God, look how bad Rachaad is.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a path to failure, which is maybe he just has one of those great 80-yard no catch games. Mm-hmm. But he is, I think it's like his prop for receptions is like -165 to the over of 2.5. Yeah. So he is expected to be in the passing game as well. I guess maybe there's concern. I think like Sean Tucker's still there. Yeah. And I think Tucker tends to catch passes. Like we don't know exactly how things are going to break down. Like what if Bucky Irving is just the first 2 downs, Sean Tucker is the 3rd down guy, or they just don't need to pass the ball, right? Like what if the defense is just taking care of things against Spencer Rattler? But I don't know, man. Like I think like Bucky Irving and the Tampa Bay defense makes a pretty good underpriced pairing that I'm going to be using a lot of. I'll be using that a lot in lineups that have like those more expensive quarterbacks like Lamar. I mean, you just put Bucky Irving in there and play the Tampa Bay defense. The Tampa Bay defense might be overowned. I'm more confident in the defense being overowned than I am in Bucky Irving. Like he's just underpriced. And I went in a deep dive on UFC actually on this for about a month ago. I started seeing how because UFC you can see guys are clearly underpriced, and this is another example. Like football, you get the clearly underpriced running back, and a lot of times they're actually not guys with good win equity in UFC and backup running backs in football actually
underowned, right? Enough. Yeah. So that's why I was just. I was surprised to see. I'm glad you said that because I was a little bit surprised. A lot of the times, some of these super cheap guys, because our projected ownership, is for the really, really large field stuff. And a lot of the times, these guys, like you said, are we used to get. It's a little different now, and I'll talk about why Bucky I think is pretty different. We used to get Dalvin's out, Alexander Madison next man up, Mixon's out, Samaje Perine next man up, and they're workhorses at $5,000 in good spots. They should be 75% owned, and they're 45. So they're actually the best play on the slate, even though they're the most popular player. I don't think I can get quite there with Bucky, but I'm not gonna push back on that. His best skill set is once the ball's in he's a good receiver, and once the ball is in his hands, he's freaking electric. His problem is that he is the size of one of my dogs, and so he has no outs. So so in my opinion, what's going to happen is he's going to take on more of the rushing. He's definitely going to get his share. They're going to throw him some screens, and he's going to get some early down stuff. The only times he's pass blocked this year
he's gotten like tossed like a little kid, through the air because he's just too little. And it's not a knock on him. He just is that small. I think Sean Tucker is going to fill in for some of that stuff, right? Like come in and don't get Baker killed. But then you have the fact that it's Spencer Rattler and the Saints are down real bad on the other side. So I don't think Bucky can like really fail. I do think it's possible that 3 other running backs like massively outperform him. And that's his outs is like, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, David Montgomery all scored 3 touchdowns. You know what I mean? Like that's the only outs to him failing, I think.
Yeah, I guess one thing I'll just add is the Saints are the only team in the league that have only allowed 1 receiving touchdown. But they too tend to give up like more relative passing yards than rushing yards. Like they've only allowed 1 receiving touchdown the whole season. And I just going into this game, like if you're Tampa Bay, you're going to be like, well, we're just going to run. Well, we're just going to run Bucky Irving, right? Like let Spencer Rattler beat us. Maybe he does. But it seems like a game where maybe Tampa Bay is just going to try to run the ball. Even though the Saints aren't allowing a ton of rushing yards per game, like they're clamping down on receiving touchdowns. So, and it's all, this is all like wonky sample size and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just seems like a game where Tampa Bay is going to try to run Bucky Irving and like maybe see what you have in the young guy, right? Like see with Rachaad White out, like is this a guy that could be a total workhorse back?
Yep, totally. I definitely have some of those. I don't know if it's bias, but sometimes it's like actually really good, and then sometimes it's maybe a little bit too galaxy braining. But this like the next man up thing is very nuanced. The like starting running back being out and this other guy, it's like a lot of the times people are just like, oh, who is the backup? He's a smash now. And then it's like, well, like Antonio Gibson is next man up for New England and nobody's excited about that. I understand why. I'm not trying to argue that. But like we have like sometimes guys go down and we chop up the work, right? Bucky's still not going to play on passing downs. He's really, really little. He's not a goal line back, really. Sean Tucker probably weighs like 40 more pounds than Bucky does. So the touchdown thing can be a little bit funky. And so again, it's not to say that he's going to fail. It's just like, I want to think about the ways in which the highest owned guy on the slate does he have paths to real failure? And I think it's thin for him because of the pass catching and everything, but I don't think they're non-existent essentially. So one way, the player who I originally liked before we got the Rachaad White news in this game was Bucky's teammate. I don't know if anybody's watched a Bucks Saints game over the last several years. Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore going at it is always a treat. So maybe do watch some of that one more than just Red Zone, just to watch those 2 guys fight all game long. But Lattimore has really shut down Mike Evans, and that has led to the other wide receivers having awesome games for years against the New Orleans Saints. The field seems to be hip to the Chris Godwin thing, which I'm a little annoyed about, but I do like Chris Godwin. The chat seems to like Kate Otten a little bit. Do you like any of the other Bucks?
Not really. I've been going back and forth on Chris Godwin. He is a guy that could beat me because I'm probably not going to have as much as the field. I think it is a little bit of narrative. I'm going to totally turn on. This is going to be the other red zone thing. I'm going to turn on red zone and see Mike Evans getting like ejected. Chris Godwin running down the field. But it just seems like it's too much of a narrative for me. And I already quoted my statistic of the Saints have only allowed 1 receiving touchdown the whole season. And I just don't know if the game's going to be that high scoring, right? Like maybe Spencer Rattler and like a Chris Godwin pairing makes some sense. Just because like if like Rattler is doing pretty well, then maybe the Saints are having to pass the ball a little bit more, and then like Chris Godwin was good. Don't get me wrong, I like being over the field on Chris Godwin often, but this might not be the game where they need to be like feeding Chris Godwin the ball.
Yeah,
assuming Mike Evans is able to stay in the game.
Right. You would have hoped, honestly, that Carr was playing here and we got a little back and forth. And then I think you could have seen one of those like 12 catch Godwin games or something, but it's like Rattler, but to your point, so Rattler's got to push back a little bit. And I think another cheap tight end, I just wanted to toss in the Saints on the Saints side. The folks were mentioning Ott, and I think that's fine. Taysom Hill is out for New Orleans. You want to get into the narrative. I don't think there's any truth to this narrative, by the way. People talk about tight ends being like, security blankets for rookie quarterbacks. Like, I don't think that that's true at all, but it does sound good. So Juwan Johnson, like, ran a whole bunch of the routes last week, is a reasonable enough receiver in this spot where we're expecting they're going to get crushed. And they have the rookie tight end or rookie quarterback, Juwan Johnson, at 3,100 on DraftKings, I think is a perfectly reasonable, another gross plug your nose punt tight end play. Let's hit some more questions before we hit kind of some of our final guys we missed amongst the player pool. Randy Fourth is locking Antonio Gibson today. We haven't really talked about him, but Ramondre is out. Tough matchup, Drake May, whatever. But are you playing any Gibson?
I'm definitely playing some Gibson. I don't love it. I think he's a guy that's maybe got a projection that's maybe overstating his ceiling. This is still a team that's projected the implied point total 15.75. I don't know that I want to they're projected to maybe score 2 touchdowns. Is Antonio Gibson going to get both of them? It's possible. And maybe Drake May's checking down to Gibson a lot. So that's possible. And he's well priced. I just don't know that the ceiling is there. I'd rather than playing like CeeDee Lamb and Antonio Gibson, and assuming I've got a bunch of other value in the lineup, I'd rather play like Derrick Henry and play like Trey Tucker or even Lad McConkey. Or or Noah Brown, right? And go that direction rather than spend up for like Derrick Henry or Saquon Barkley and spend down at a wide receiver that could have a monster game, whereas like Antonio Gibson, and it can happen. I just think the field is overestimating the chances that Antonio Gibson has a monster game.
I think that makes a ton of sense. So I like this question from K-Town also. So I do tons of just tinkering around. So I run optimals, all that kind of stuff. People need to know how all the sausage gets made. But then I like to be think of an idea, right? Let's plug that in, maybe run some optimals, play around, right? Tinker around, see what I can get with it, right? And something I do like to do almost every week is plug Justin Fields in and maybe one of his pass catchers and just say, okay, I really want to play the Lamar thing here, but what if I use Fields as the kind of substitute for Lamar? Like Fields is going to have his big game. I can get the Lamar stuff. I'm not saying that that's what I want to do, right? But how can I fit the Fields thing in? He's like, what about Fields Freiermuth? You get a little cheaper rushing quarterback with his tight end, who's been honestly pretty good. Fill that tight end spot with Pittsburgh. They have a good matchup against Vegas today, although I don't know that Vegas can push back on them, which is a problem. But what about using those guys as a super cheap quarterback tight end stack that'll allow you to get the other stuff you want?
Sorry, I missed the stack.
Fields, Freiermuth.
I don't like playing Justin Fields.
And I do. So
yeah. So the thing with Fields is he did have this monster game, but he needed 2 rushing touchdowns to get there. And he can get 2 rushing touchdowns. It just isn't going to happen that often. Actually, I don't mind if I'm playing Field, maybe playing Pickens just for the narrative. But that's something I'm not going to go to a ton. It's maybe if my 150 set, I want to have a couple of Fields Pickens lineups, right? Pickens is again, he's the red zone guy, right? They're running down the field. I don't know. This Raiders team, man. I think the thing that I'm playing the most from this game is Trey Tucker.
Yeah,
because I think Trey Tucker is good and underpriced, and they're gonna have to pass the ball. And some Bowers on FanDuel. FanDuel, Bowers is a little bit better because Jake Ferguson isn't quite as good because he's not as underpriced. The Steelers aren't a team that's going out there trying to win 42-0. They're trying to win 21-7. And so, this game's got a 36.5 point total. So I'm probably not going there a ton.
I think it's very similar to the Levis thing or something. If I were doing 150, I would have a non-zero number, but it's still a very, very small number because, like you said, Fields can do that. And I would put Trey Tucker on the other side, honestly. On DraftKings, probably Bowers on the other side. On FanDuel, you could play Tucker too. But I guess that I think our SimLabs was Alexander Madison was popping a little bit. But again, I'm trying to stay away from some of these games. I just thought the Fields thing was interesting. Thinking of ways to do a lot of the stuff we talked about here, right? You want CD, you want Ferg, you want Henry and McLaurin and all these guys, like, well, you got to save somewhere. It's like, okay, Bucky is one, but I probably need to save somewhere else too. And I kind of like sometimes doing that. That's what I did in the Colts game when I played Fields Pickens, and I just used Fields Pickens as like I'm like, I really want to stack up these awesome offenses, but I need like the $3,000 savings that I get from playing these guys alongside with it. I don't know that we need it today, but I do think it's interesting. All right, let's hit some more questions here. About less than 10 minutes before we bring on the crunch time folks. I let Markel, not a question, but a hot take, one we haven't talked about that I like. Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. He said he calls Jalen Hurts top scoring quarterback today. Does have AJ Brown and Devonta Smith back against the spiraling Cleveland Browns. Good Lord. How much Eagles? What are you doing with the Eagles today?
I like the Eagles today. This is another team. So they're the sneaky high implied point total team because they're in a game with like a 43-point total, but the Browns implied run total or implied point total is so low. Still baseball season for another few weeks. But the Browns are projected to score so few points that the Eagles actually have one of the higher implied point totals of the day. And this Eagles team, like teams are always like underplayed coming off a bye because they're out of sight, out of mind for a week. And then, but they're resting up. And this Eagles team needed a bye. Like this is a great, well-timed bye for the Eagles. They're getting AJ Brown back. They're getting Devonta Smith back. Well, now they're pairing that with Saquon Barkley. I actually had a thought that maybe the Eagles are like slow rolling the season, right? So last year they got off this amazing starts and then faded. And then last week of the season, they were like losing to Arizona and then ended up in the wild card and got tossed from the playoffs. Maybe this season they're like, well, you know what? AJ Brown's going to rest with a hamstring injury for the first few weeks. We're going to get Saquon Barkley involved. We're going to integrate him into the team. And we're going to start building momentum as the season goes on. Like this offense was so scary last year at the beginning of the season. And now they added Saquon Barkley, who's looked incredible. And
Goddard looked better too. Goddard looked better when those guys were out too. He kind of, was turned to nothing last year. He looked pretty good.
They're just telling AJ Brown, like, rest the hamstring, man. And you just rest up. We're gonna get Goddard and Barkley involved. And we're gonna build momentum as the season goes along instead of like what happened last year. I don't really think they're doing that, but I do think they're in a good spot today. They're playing at home. The Browns could actually be falling apart, right? Like this is like a kind of an ugly narrative surrounding the team with Deshaun Watson, and that's got to be really awkward. And this is like their defense is a little bit banged up. I think Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward are playing, but like they're a little bit dinged up. And like when they're looking at Deshaun Watson just throwing interception after interception, knowing how high paid he is, and the fact that the team has to play him. I don't know. Like this could be like, are they really running as they're making business decisions maybe, and so maybe this is a situation that like kind of sets up well for an Eagles ROM. So like I'm probably taking some of that ownership from like the Carolina game and maybe some of the other games and putting it just into some Philadelphia players. And I think this game is actually a little bit better priced on FanDuel as well. Like I think Jalen Hurts is a little bit better priced. Maybe it's just that he scores better. And there is less appeal on FanDuel to dropping down to like the really cheap quarterbacks, but getting a little more Jalen Hurts on and all of this game on FanDuel versus DraftKings.
I think that makes a ton of sense, and I keep tinkering around. I told you, I'm a tinkerer. I start to hone in on certain pieces, and then you always have in the main single entry lineup, I always have a couple of spots. I'm like, it's not that I don't care what they are. It's just like nothing was like totally locked in there. And Eagles keep jump, whether it's AJ Brown, Saquon, Hurts, Stacks, whatever, keep making sense in this lineup. And so it's good to hear you say that. We Major asks, what about Javonte Williams? Any Javonte Williams? We haven't talked about him, but a good price, decent enough spots. What about Javonte?
It's tough because there's so many other like value running backs now, but it's not impossible. I don't mind it. I keep waiting for this game where Javonte Williams is going to get like 10 checkdowns from Bo Nix. And,
we were told. 5. What happened? Where are all these checkdowns?
Yeah, but he got five catches for 50 yards last week. So like it's like happening. I mean, maybe like 10 receptions is out of reach, but he doesn't necessarily need to get 10 receptions at his price. I don't know. I think it's a valid sneaky play. it's somebody that's going to be totally off the radar. I wouldn't go berserk, but I mean, if you're playing one lineup and you want to get a little bit different, like that gets you a little bit different. Just keep in mind the implied point total is like 16.25. Like he's not that different of a play from Antonio Gibson, and Gibson's going to be much higher. So I don't mind Javonte Williams.
Ton of sense. Let's hit a couple more, and then we can give our kind of a walking out take before we tournament winning take, final take, dare I say, before we bring on the crunch time folks. This was a good question. I didn't even get this far, so maybe I don't know what this says about me. Is Kamara, either just Kamara or Kamara plus Saints defense, like a realistic contrarian way to approach that game, right? Play it the other way.
Yeah, actually, I don't mind that. I like Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley more than Kamara, but I wouldn't be shocked again if Kamara got 10 receptions, or maybe they just run Alvin Kamara. And that's maybe not a path to winning this game. Because like Tampa Bay tends to like lock down the run pretty well. But Kamara is not necessarily the traditional like bruising running back that like you're just going to pound him into like Vita Vea over and over again. Like they'll get him out into space and stuff. Like so maybe there is a point where this game, it looks like the Saints just aren't going to win it. If Spencer Rattler looks bad, and then they're just like they're playing, they're pushing like giving the ball to Kamara and getting out of there. That's maybe not the best argument for the Saints defense, but I mean it's possible. It's like the defensive scoring is so random that like I don't mind it. That's good.
All right. Cheaper running. So Josh Jacobs gets shouted. I'll give a shout to Josh Jacobs. I think in the mix for tournaments today. A cheaper running back on FanDuel besides Bucky, Tyrone Tracy. I'm trying to think of other guys off the top of my head on FanDuel. Eckler. I'm not. These are not in any list of order, but we should have gone through, I think, quite a few different running backs over there. Gibson. There are plenty of options. Go to Lineup HQ or SimLabs and check out those running backs over there. I'm Authentic says, who's puking out Ian Thomas? I'm puking out a Panthers tight end, but it's definitely not Ian Thomas. It's Jatavian Sanders for me. Joe Mixon is back. They mentioned so for anybody that was thinking about playing Cam Akers, which I imagine was no one, Joe Mixon is back. They have 4 running backs active today for Houston. Yeah, Ruthless Villain says this is probably one that we should just quickly touch on. I know you mentioned Trey Tucker. I agree with everything you said about the Raiders. DJ Turner does appear to be the next man up for Vegas after Jacoby Myers and, of course, Devontae Adams. Are you going to play any of that punt or any of that? Are you going to get outside of Trey Tucker at all?
Probably not. I love the idea that like Tyreek McAllister just takes over the slate. It's just probably not going to happen. Like, I think he's the 3rd wide receiver. I'm like, who's like, I was like looking when I saw that Jacoby Myers was out. Like, who's the 3rd wide receiver? And I think it's most like they're not necessarily going to be passing the ball. Like, it's not going to be like a super high paced game. So it's potentially just going to be like Bowers and Trey Turner. So, and like I am playing Trey Turner or Trey Turner. It's the second
still
week in a row.
season. Yeah.
Trey Tucker. Baseball's still another few weeks, but I guess not for the Phillies. So yeah, primarily the guy I'm going to be playing, from this game as like a one-off is going to be Trey Tucker. But you're not crazy for playing like some DJ Turner. We don't know how it's going to, not the best cheater downs. We don't know how this is going to break down. I just think that like Tucker and Bowers are probably the receiving game for the Raiders at this point. But like, I don't know, like I think that like DJ Turner is maybe the best like 3,300 wide receiver.
Yeah, probably the best $3,300 wide receiver is just like Rattler's the best $4,000 quarterback. That doesn't mean I got to play him. You know what I mean? So, all right, let's give our tournament winning takes. What's the one thing? Again, it's always open. If you missed this, if you haven't been with us before, it can be a stack. I've given guys who've gotten stone cold zeros here, and we've given out some tournament winners. We've been all over the board, but it's been the dartboard has been peppered. It's just the wall has been hit as well as the dartboard. So let's see if we can find the bullseye here today. What's your favorite thing in tournaments?
So last week, week 1 I gave out Al Pierce. Week 2 was Marvin Harrison, and then last week I gave out Jamar Chase. I'm not going like crazy off the board this week because I did go to Zach Ertz 1 week and that didn't really work out that well.
We're not doing Washington. We're not doing well with Washington so far.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go on the other side. I'm going Derrick Henry. There's no player I've been more cumulatively under the field on my 10 years of playing DFS than Derrick Henry. But this is a smash spot for him. Ravens have the highest implied point total on the week. Derrick Henry is plus 210, not for a touchdown, for 2 touchdowns. And I think if you look at his projection, but I think he's projected for about 88 yards. Or if he gets that 100-yard, which is now a 3-point bonus on both FanDuel and DraftKings. If he gets that 100 yards, which is obviously well within reach, then I don't know, with 2 touchdowns, he could be breaking the slate. So I'm going Derrick Henry. And I'll just add, I think this Commanders defense is actually overperformed a little bit so far this year, and that might not happen against Baltimore. They might get a little bit exposed here. So yeah, I'm going Derrick Henry.
Wholeheartedly agree. I can't believe it. This is the day that Derrick Henry does nothing. If you and I are both very bullish on Derrick Henry, I'm going to add the very logical next step. If Derrick Henry is doing all this and everything that John just said is true, which it is, Terry McLaurin on the other side. I really do like Austin Eckler, but I've kind of just as I put lineups together a little bit, the McLaurin thing has made a little bit more sense. He is the passing game for Washington. Essentially, the other guys might catch a ball here and there. Baltimore is going to know that, but Terry has moved around a little bit more this season, and he is the epitome of what we're now coining the red zone player. The turn on the red zone and watching him run 60 yards for a touchdown down the sideline. If they're losing, what the problem for Terry is that the box scores and everything don't look that good because they're always winning and they're always running and they're only throwing 25 times a game. That I don't think that they can do that today. You can't show up against Baltimore and only throw it 25 times. He has almost 60% of Washington's team air yards. That's nuts. It's bonkers. His role is insane. 30% target share, 60% air yard share, slightly rounded up, but you get the point. For 6,400 on DraftKings in this game, too good to be true. So lock those 2 into your tournament lineups. And while you're doing that, let's bring on the crunch time guys. We're a couple minutes behind, but let's bring them in and polish up some final takes. All right, guys. Final take. Your first take, our final take. So F, I guess, is this one. But TJ, you've been back behind the curtains, probably itching to bring in the takes. I think I saw 100% Bucky from you. So no Bucky. Bucky doesn't count. What's the favorite tournament play?
Yeah, almost 100% Bucky for me. I have, I think, 40 lineups. 36 of them have Bucky and 4 have the Saints defense. So 100% of one of those 2. But my play of the day, my first take is going to be it's Spencer Rattler week. He's going to be in the winning lineup, and you have him tagged Ebeimfohr. And
he's a $4,000 quarterback on DraftKings. You got to call notice to it, and then tell people that hey, if you, at your own risk, play this guy at your own risk.
I got him in half my lineups today. I love me some Spencer Rattler, and I think you can do it with a double stack Olave and Juwan Johnson.
Luuch, bring some sanity to the conversation, please.
Talking to the wrong guy. Do you need me to break the tie on Henry? Is there a third reverse mush?
Yeah.
Do I need to say it? Because I'm with you guys, and digging in a little more on fantasy points. Washington's been terrible against man gap scheme runs, and that is the Ravens' MO. So we'll see. I could get a little weird here, maybe say Hopkins or Ridley scores twice and aggravates some people, and the Titans still find a way to make a meme and lose to Joe Flacco. I took a nap, and then he is starting suddenly, and Caleb Williams threw 5 touchdowns while I took a quick one. And I'm like, what is happening? Should I sleep through the whole slate today? But I have one build like this out of my 7 hand builds. I'm going to go with Packers with a Marvin Harrison bring back is optimal in the power sweep today. Hopefully mine, but we'll see.
I love that. Chief, bring us home.
Well, I don't think it's going to be much of a hot take today, but last I checked, Amon-Ra St. Brown was still the best wide receiver for the Detroit Lions. And while I am seeing a robust 17% ownership, at least in the blitz ownership projections, we all love that game, but we want CD Moore, Looks like we're way more interested in playing Drake London today. I mean, when Zay Flowers is getting 14% and Amon-Ra is getting 17%, to me, that says the field isn't on enough of the actual good receivers. Not that, any of those other guys are bad, but Amon-Ra has a track record of showing that he's going to be the best receiver on that team in what we hope is a competitive game. Give me all of them Amon-Ra St. Brown I can handle. And just for kicks, give me CeeDee Lamb on the other side when no one's going to double stack 2 8K wide receivers today.
No, they're not, because we're playing Derrick Henry and then going to be tilting it later. I promise. We'll get out of here. Leave it to these crunch time guys. If we didn't get to your questions, hit those guys up, and we'll see you next week. Peace.
Thanks, fellas. Always quality stuff. Love that show. Good to see you guys. We have like a food for thought, either reunion or a preview for tomorrow's podcast. So good to see you guys. There's Will Priester looking sharp today. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. It's another day. It's another Sunday. I actually really like this slate. I just think I think there's so many different ways you can go because of the cheap spots at running back and receiver this week. I think there's this weird combination of 5K players that any could go off. And so when it's that type of week, I get real excited.
And then there's TJ Bucky Irving Zwarych hanging out with us. What's going on, my friend?
Yeah, Bucky Irving and Spencer Rattler. What could go wrong for me in week 6? I will preface my Rattler love, as I have all week, by saying I am a massive Saints fan. And so there is some bias in there, especially for how much I dislike Derek Carr. So be warned, there is the bias. And having said that, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I got 50% Rattler today, but I'm doing well. It was a tough wake up for me this morning. Show starts at 7:30 a.m. my time, and so it was a tough wake up. But I'm always looking forward to hanging out with the two of you, and so that made it a little sweeter for crunch time coming up.
Drop your questions. I see some people typing in the live stream Discord, and TJ will aid me in hopefully sifting through some BS in the YouTube chat there, and we'll get to them as well. I'm going to get through some reads real quick, and then we will be on our way because there's a lot to talk about. Splash Sports, we've been talking about it all year. Cool site. If you're into pick'ems and survivor pools, they're raising the game over there. It gives you a chance. They're giving you a chance to win 12x your entry. Just pick more or less in any stat categories in terms of the pick'em contest and build your entry using at least 2 selections. Splash is available in 34 states. The ultimate platform for peer-to-peer fantasy and betting contests. Challenge the RG experts and the community. Splashsports.com/RotoGrinders. Got a promo code for you, Roto10. That's Roto10, ROTO10, to get a $10 credit when you join your first contest over there at Splash Sports. Another shout out to Super DG for taking down the Week 5 RG Listener League. Don't forget, each week you can join the league, play alongside other viewers and your favorite hosts for a chance to compete every week for first place and win yourself a month of RG Combo Premium. Check our description for an invite to the contest when it goes live each and every Wednesday. And lastly, RG Combo Lite. Our newest product gives you the power of simulation for a fraction of the price and other tools. Competitors charge hundreds a month for their sim products. Combo Lite is just $39.99. Includes our SimLabs lineup building tool and content from your favorite DFS analysts. Combo Lite doesn't limit you to one sport either. You get the 4 core major sports, MLB, NFL, NBA, and PGA. You won't find a more cost-effective option anywhere. Shiv Daddy in the chat said 3rd place last week. Tip of the cap. Good stuff. Good stuff. Drop those questions. I see some coming in. That's awesome. We'll start and just go around the horn with quarterback. But we on Monday is food for thought, Chief. Sometimes you got to keep it simple and play the good players against the bad teams. So it looks like Atlanta's carrying a little bit of ownership. We're kind of thinking about that on Monday. But talk to me about quarterback. Do you have any interest in Kirk Cousins while I'm here with that topic as well?
Yeah, I have plenty of interest in Kirk Cousins this week. I have plenty of interest in the Atlanta offense. The problem is this offense is carrying way more ownership than I anticipated when we started the week. Now, Kirk Cousins isn't really carrying a whole lot. I mean, 6% but we do have Bijan and London carrying some. But I think Kirk Cousins is fine. I don't think Kirk Cousins is going to throw for 500 yards this week, so don't worry about that. But I do think 250 and 3 is reasonable here. I think he's got a shot at that. Maybe 300 if the Panthers can keep it close. One of the things I think we're seeing from Kirk Cousins is this offense is starting to round into form. Everybody thought Kyle Pitts was dead, and he picked up some production last week. Drake London is continuing to pick up production. Mooney, my guy Mooney, is continuing to pick up production. And then you have a thinner Ray McLeod, who's also part of this offense, who's picking up production. So I like Kirk Cousins this week. But I like a lot of these guys in this 6K range, to be honest. I feel like that's the money-making range this week. Full disclosure, I am playing Lamar on FanDuel because I can. But on DraftKings, I'm mostly getting the Kyler Murray and under, mostly. That's kind of the sweet spot for me. Kyler, Dak, Jordan Love, Baker, Goff, Cousins. That, a little bit of Justin Fields, and, of course, some Rattler. But that 6K range is my sweet spot this week for quarterback.
Who do you think the cash game option is today, TJ, at quarterback, in your opinion?
Well, I think the optimal option is Dak Prescott as your cash game quarterback. I'm playing Spencer Rattler at 4K. I just love how my lineup looks when I do that. But I think Dak is the optimal cash game option today. If you're able to get up to Lamar or you really want to play Jaden Daniels, I get it. I'm going Rattler, but I think optimal cash game, it's Dak.
Okay. And you're talking Spencer Rattler. You're, very wide gap in pricing with these quarterbacks, obviously. Rattler's 4K. Will Levis, if you can stomach it, 4,800. Then you go all the way up top to Lamar and that Baltimore-Washington game, which could have some fireworks to it as well. Who else are you interested in?
Yeah, so like I said, I got Rattler in half my lineups, but then after that, Dak is my next highest owned. And then basically everyone after that, I only have in 1 to 2 lineups of my 40. So Jaden Daniels, Will Levis, Lamar Jackson, Kirk Cousins, Jordan Love, Justin Fields, and believe it or not, I even Joe Flacco. I threw in a bunch of Flacco teams in there as soon as we found out he was starting. So I actually have 4 of those. Getting to a little bit of Hurts, and believe it or not, I actually have 1 Aiden O'Connell stack.
Okay. I mean, it's cheap. Is he with Tucker? Is it Tucker or Bowers or other?
Both.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, hey.
Debating even throwing DJ Moore in it as well, and just basically trying to get maybe
Turner, right?
Henry, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and CeeDee Lamb all in the same lineup.
All right. It's not for me, but it's for someone. I totally get it. Anything else at quarterback, Chief?
No, nothing major. I mean, I in my main team, I do have Justin Fields on DraftKings. In my main single entry team, but I'm playing him naked for what it's worth. So hoping I catch some nice upside from him, and then I've got some some other nice correlations in that one. Going forward. But yeah, quarterback, I think we've covered the bulk of it. Once again, I do think the 6K range is the sweet spot on DraftKings. Murray, Prescott, Love, Mayfield, Goff, Cousins. That's the sweet spot for me.
Well, I mean, let's go into running back here. Bucky Irving projected to be very popular. He's not in the 6K range. He's cheaper. But the 6K range on DraftKings at running back, Chief, is also pretty nice. We don't know much on Joe Mixon going up against tough run defense as it is. But you have James Conner, high floor, high touchdown equity. Josh Jacobs, great matchup. Same deal as James Conner, high floor, high touchdown equity. Bijan, very popular against your Carolina Panthers. David Montgomery, massive edge in the trenches to Detroit. The problem is, and I like David Montgomery a lot, but man, it is so frustrating for fantasy purposes with the way they are just splitting work with Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And I couldn't believe it. I had to check twice, but is it 2 weeks in a row now that Jahmyr Gibbs hasn't seen a single target in the passing game, which is interesting. Chuba Hubbard.
They haven't legitimately been doing passing downs, Gibbs running and then down at the goal line, Montgomery It's just been like, here's Montgomery's drive, here's Gibbs's drive, here's Montgomery's drive, here's Gibbs's drive. Unless one of them gets a bunch of work and gets tired, they'll throw the other one in. But Gibbs hasn't been getting targets, and he's been getting a weird amount of goal line carries lately.
Montgomery got paid too, so he's having a good weekend. Chuba Hubbard, your guy, Chief, also in that 6K range. Tony Pollard, J.K. Dobbins, loaded slate for running backs at nice prices, and of course, also the top options can break the slate in Barkley, Henry, and Kamara, and the aforementioned Jahmyr Gibbs if the cards fall his way. So, what are you doing here at running back? I mean, this is really a fascinating slate here to play.
I mean, for me, I'm loaded up on these cheap guys. So I reserve the right to be wrong here, but we're getting Irving, Gibson, and Eckler in the 5K range on both sides. And I feel like the field is gravitating towards Bucky Irving. And I don't think it's the wrong place. I don't want anybody to think that, because clearly he should lead the backfield today. And obviously Antonio Gibson is just he plays for the Patriots. But if he gets any type of elevated Ramondre role, that's 15, 16 carries, 5 to 6 targets. Like, he should have a good day. But the guy that seems to be on the outside looking out here is Austin Eckler. And I feel like people think Austin Eckler's production is just dead, but we're only a year or two removed from him, being with the Chargers. And yeah, he's never been this guy that's going to gash you on the ground. But I mean, if this game is competitive, Luch, I feel like hear me out here, Alvin Kamara light. I think this could be a 6 or 7, 8 target game for him. He's already been involved in the passing game anyway. If he catches 5 or 6 balls for 40 yards, gets in the end zone, whether rushing or receiving, right? Now we're looking at already, let's just call it 9, 15 points plus any other extra rushing he gets. I mean, this could be a 20-point running back today, along with the other 5K guys. So I'm putting a lot of stock in the 5K running backs today. Full disclosure, I love Bijan because Carolina, and I've mentioned it all season, losing Derek Brown early has really just obliterated what I feel like any type of, run-stopping defense we were going to have. And so I really like those guys. I feel like people think Josh Jacobs is dead. I don't think he's dead. At 6,700, he's always a few carries away from breaking the slate. So once again, I'm trying to find guys that other people don't want to play. Austin Eckler in the cheap range at running back is one of those people. Everybody wants to play Bucky. A few people are playing Gibson, but I don't think Eckler is at the top of people's hearts and minds. And in a competitive, what we think is a competitive, Washington Ravens game where maybe Washington's behind finally, I just think there's too many opportunities available for him.
Yeah, I love the Eckler call, and you nailed a lot of that. TJ, talk to me about running back.
Not a whole lot to add. Bijan is my 4th favorite, then I'm focusing on Eckler, Bucky Irving, and Antonio Gibson as my core 3. They're my 3 top guys today. I'm getting to a lot of Derrick Henry. Henry and Bijan kind of round out my top 5 running backs on the slate. I like some James Conner. I am actually getting a little bit of Jeremy McNichols as well as a potential option instead of Eckler to save a bunch of salary, because I think he could get work in the run game and in the pass game in this spot. I like David Montgomery or Jahmyr Gibbs in my Dak Prescott teams. I like having one of those two in the lineups, even if I'm playing J-Mo or Amon-Ra St. Brown in it. I'm getting a little bit of Pollard. I like Kamara, but that's essentially it. I got a pretty small running back pool.
Okay, let's move on. We got 12:35 Eastern here on to wide receiver. And C.D. Lamb as the most expensive receiver in DraftKings, followed by Amon-Ra St. Brown. A lot of projected points in that Dallas-Detroit game, and Detroit with that stout run defense. One could and would think that the Cowboys might have to resort to the pass game a little bit to get this thing going. I will say, I built 7 teams, and one guy who I am still thinking about working in, and a little scared that I don't have him. Not because he's super popular, but I think he could break the slate. Is AJ Brown? Eagles coming off a bye week. I think he's right. Cleveland is playing so much man coverage, which is right in AJ Brown's wheelhouse. I'm still kicking the tires on AJ Brown. So curious to hear your take on wide receiver, Chief. And there's plenty of options. Your boy Drake London in that Carolina matchup is, like you said, carrying a little bit more ownership than I anticipated as well. But man, Atlanta is just in a mouthwatering spot here against Carolina today. Oh, for once it's not me. Mute count 1 for the Chief.
Yeah, got a little bit of ultimate mute there. My bad. I really think I don't think Drake London is a bad play. But I also think, for me, Amon-Ra is my number one target today. And in that Dallas game, we're expecting points to be scored. So I really like him. I don't think we see a lot of, and I mentioned it, to start the show, I just don't think we see a lot of CD, Amon-Ra, St. Brown double stack or run backs today because of all the value that we have everywhere. I think people are, going to resort to maybe spinning up on one running back or spinning up on one receiver, so forth and so on. So I do think, I do think that's a viable strategy today. Get the two biggest receivers on the slate in terms of possible production in the same game, and then let the chips fall where they may. So I do have one of those bills on FanDuel. I know for sure that I hand built. Something else I want to mention in that same game, I'm going to go ahead and go. This is deep tournament stuff, but Kevontae Turpin at 3,800 today as a part of that game, I think that's also viable. I don't know if you play him by himself. Like, to me, he's more of a double stack candidate. So
Triple.
Maybe I run a what's that?
Triple. You can leave CD out of it, get yourself some Amon-Ra, and you go Turpin, Tolbert, and Ferguson. That's the lineup I have.
Yeah, I get it. I'm just saying I think that's a viable strategy. Also, I think he saw 5 targets last week. This is a guy, if he continuously gets 5 targets, one of these could easily be a 40, 50-yard touchdown. And he catches one pass for 50 yards and a touchdown. That's 12 points plus anything else he gets now is gravy. He's got some opportunity in the special teams game. So I just, at 3,800 in one of the bigger games, with the receiver down, I know Tolbert's kind of the next guy up, but I do think he's viable. Really like Chris Godwin today. Really like Marvin Harrison Jr. today. He's not projecting well, but that game's projected to be one of the fastest paced games on the slate. So I really like him. Obviously, Terry McLaurin is fine. I think a lot of people, or I don't want to say a lot of people, but I feel like more people are going to be gravitating towards Josh Downs now that Richardson is out. Downs at 5,500. He gets another 12 target game possibly. If that happens, he should be another that's able to put up big numbers today. So I'll cut it off there and let some other guys get in. But as you can see, I really like this slate. And don't forget my boy Darnell Mooney. I'm going to continue to play him probably until about the 6K range on DraftKings.
Yeah, and TJ, I was going to mention Joe Flacco starting, and we've talked about it for weeks. Obviously, it's a boost to the pass catchers in Indy for sure. I have the most interest in Josh Downs, according to our RG ownership projections. It doesn't look like he's getting that much steam, if any. So I think Downs is actually really interesting for tournaments. Jalen Tolbert's carrying a little bit of ownership, as is Ladd McConkey. I happen to really like Jalen Tolbert. We haven't projected at 13%. As of just after noon Eastern. I might have to do one more refresh, but I that's fine with me. I could stomach 13%. And he's leading the Cowboys in air yards the last 3 weeks, and 2 of those games was with Brandon Cooks, at least for some capacity. So I like Tolbert. It's probably my favorite Cowboy today. What are your thoughts on just talking about receiver? But of course, if you want to piggyback off anything I just said, go for it.
Tolbert's my favorite Cowboy today as well. I'm 100% on the same page as you. I do want to hit on a question from the last show that didn't get hit on it because it's a receiver question. Ladd McConkey on DraftKings, McConkey and Jameson Williams, or Pierce and Mooney. That would be Jameson Williams and Ladd McConkey for me. What about you, Chief?
Yeah, Jameson and McConkey.
I just,
I love Mooney. I love Mooney.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I feel too. But I would only play Pierce if I was playing him with Flacco and Downs.
Right.
They just have so many bodies when they're all healthy at the wide receiver position, and you don't know what Titans team you're going to get if Will Levis can hold on to the ball and not gift an extra red zone trip or two immediately. I don't know. Again, I'm just assuming Michael Pittman might see a little bit more L'Jarius Sneed, so I'm just kind of. And I love AD Mitchell. I wish he'd get more involved. I think the guy could be a stud. But also, we don't know the health of all these guys. Josh Downs, and I didn't think Pittman was going to play on Monday when we recorded. So we don't know how healthy these guys are. And another one is how healthy is Christian Watson, because we talked about Mr. Wicks on Monday, but now with Dobbs back from his little vacation and Christian Watson's playing, I can't find anything concrete on if Watson will be limited. So I do like that Green Bay game, and I do like these Colts pass catchers with Flacco. There's a lot of bodies, and it's tough to navigate through. You have any thought on either of those situations, Chief?
Well, I mean, I think you just gotta take your pick here. Like any of them could be good. Can I parlay that into like another team that I feel like is similar, but maybe we're not thinking about it that way?
Yeah,
I feel like Houston's in the same boat, don't you? Like clearly Diggs is going to be the guy, but you got Tank Dell. I think, and I know this guy plays tight end, but I think Dalton Schultz is like, you get what I'm saying? Like you may not quite know the extreme production, but I think all of those guys need to be played today because of the situation. And that's how I feel. I feel the same way about Dallas. Like that's why I like Turpin. That's why I like Lamb. That's why I like Tober. When you've got so many options, I think you need to consider them all, in these types of situations.
And it doesn't appear, according to our ownership projections on RG, that really anyone's playing Diggs. This range is right below the top two stud receivers. The highest priced guys, AJ Brown and Diggs. I thought Diggs would be much more popular. Is Christian Gonzalez, scaring people away? I don't know. But maybe that's an oversight by the public here. What's your Stephon Diggs take, TJ?
I am oversighting him as well. I like Tank Dell a little bit better than Diggs today, but I'm not getting to a lot of either of them. I just kind of feel like even without Nico Collins, this could easily be a game that Diggs gets 7 receptions for 80 yards and Dell gets 6 for 50. Hutchison gets 3 for 40. Schultz gets 4 for 50. Mixon has 80 yards and Akers has 40. And it's just all spread the heck out. So I'm not getting to a ton of the receivers from Houston, but I do like Tank Dell the best out of all of them. I'm doing a lot of stack specific things. Like I have a lot of Godwin on my Rattler teams. I have a lot of Olave with Rattler today because, he had that little snippet in his press conference where he was like, my job when I'm out there is to get Olave the ball. He's special. I got to be getting him the ball. So I'm playing that narrative a little bit, getting some Olave with my Rattler. But my favorite receivers are I'm with Chief. Amon-Ra St. Brown is number 1 for me. Jalen Tolbert is my next favorite option. And then Jaden Reed is somebody I absolutely love today. We talk about that Packers offense a little bit. I think that's another one that could get spread out quite a bit. But the guy to me that is always going to be getting his in that offense is Jaden Reed.
Yeah, I do like Jaden Reed. I liked him more when I thought Christian Watson wouldn't play. But this guy can just flip a slate. So I do still like Jaden Reed quite a bit. I wish Amari Cooper had a competent quarterback back there. I mean, he's 3rd in the league in air yard share. He's the alpha. The volume's been there all year. I'm trying to pull up his catchable target rate. I know it's probably not good, but no one's playing the Eagles. Coming off a bye week, maybe there's just too many bodies. No one wants to figure out if it's going to be Devontae or AJ or Saquon. I think it could be multiple pieces that could get there. I mean, the Browns are not sustaining drives and they're not very good. The kicker is the Eagles defense isn't very good either, depending on what side of the bed Vic Fangio wakes up on and if he adjusts or not. But you think about Amari Cooper. I think people are just kind of sick of Deshaun Watson. Had that 80-yard touchdown called back a couple weeks ago on a BS holding call. So I think Cooper's interesting for tournaments. I think you could pair him with Barkley. And like you guys, like Chief, like you said, that 6K range is kind of loaded. So when you're looking for a flex on DraftKings, probably not really thinking about Amari Cooper. So he's one of my deeper tournament plays today. Do you have anything else on wide receiver, fellas, or should we move on to tight end?
Last quick thing, my favorite cheapie would be Trey Tucker, but I love the Devontae Turpin call for lineups that you're playing Dak Prescott, or even if maybe you're playing Jared Goff. But then on FanDuel specifically, Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton, both really strong plays as well.
I'm a glutton for punishment, so I might have a sprinkle of Calvin Ridley in my builds as well. So
I have one Levis team that has both Ridley and Hopkins, but that's the only place I'm touching them.
Okay, that's fair. Chief, are we on to tight end?
Yeah, man. Let's move it so we can get these people's questions answered.
Yes, sir. Brock Bowers, here we are. Third of the way through the season. He's the highest priced tight end on a main slate. He's been awesome. Just 10%. Trey McBride, healthy, good game environment. Looks like no one's really going there. Sam Laporta, brutal start for stud tight ends in general, as we know. Tucker Kraft coming off a couple big games. Jake Ferguson in a good game environment as well. Kyle Pitts, which version are we going to get today, Chief? I don't know. What are you thinking about tight ends?
I mean, hopefully we get the good version because I actually think he's viable today against the Panthers. And I think he's actually showing some big playability. He's just got to get in the end zone on one of these big plays, Luke. Like he's had a couple big ones this season and it's fallen just short to just not get into the end zone. So I do like him. I feel like, Zach Ertz at 3,700 on cheap end is fine. Same thing for Cade Otton. However, I think this 5K range is kind of the moneymaker. Like Jake Ferguson at 5K is obviously, I think, really good today. I think Trey McBride is really good. I expect the Green Bay Packers to get out ahead of this game at home. Arizona playing a little earlier. And so I like McBride. I like Ferguson quite a bit today. Obviously, Brock Bowers is the 6K guy, and I think the target's going to be there. I think it's reasonable to play him because you can today, right? This isn't one of those slates where I feel like you have to fade the tight ends that are actually getting to work. I think there's enough. But if you ask me my favorite right now, I think it's Kyle Pitts for me at 4,400. He's my guy.
Okay. TJ, tight end.
The Ferguson, Bowers, and Trey McBride range is my favorite. I love those three. They're who I'm trying to get to the most. I'm pairing a lot of Jawan Johnson with my Spencer Rattler. I think that's a very, very strong, sneaky stack today. I actually really like Kyle Pitts. I typically like to fade him when he's picking up a lot of ownership and he's popular because he hasn't done a whole lot in the NFL yet. But he's starting to pick up his game a little bit, and him and Cousins are the only two Falcons that aren't picking up ownership today. So I think it's super strong from a game theory perspective to have a lineup that doesn't play Bijan, that doesn't play London, and only has Pitts as your one Falcon player today. And say he scores 2 touchdowns, nobody else scores more than 1. He's the only one optimal. And so I like the Pitts call. Dalton Schultz I'm getting to a little bit. And then Cade Otton I really like at 3,500 as well.
Okay. Anybody want to throw a dart at a defense or two?
I mean, the elephant in the room is the Bucks. Like, they're going to be super highly owned. I think we're projecting for 14%, but I bet it will be even higher than that going up against the rookie QB. I'm playing a lot of Bucks defense, but that's because I'm playing an absolute ton of Spencer Rattler. And I'm also playing a ton of Bucky Irving, stacking them together, but also with a ton of Rattler. I kind of want to hedge that a little bit and get to a lot of the Bucks defense as well in my lineups that doesn't have Rattler. And I honestly think from a single entry or cash standpoint, if you do play Rattler and you're not stacking him, you can play both Bucks defense and Rattler in the same lineup. I think that's totally fine. Houston and
Houston's
Pittsburgh
on my list for sure also.
Yeah, Houston is number 1 for me. Pittsburgh's number 2, I think. And then if I'm trying to spend down, it's either the Buccaneers or the Saints.
And TJ and I play the Steelers every week, by the way.
Yeah.
That's like a staple defense for us. They're never too high. They're never too low. They're typically right in the middle. And they have the ability to pick up some big gains if they get going in the sack game. So,
am I crazy for punting a New England team or two at 2,400?
No, I don't think
any defense is ever wrong.
Like the only defense I think is ever wrong is the Panthers. Other than that, I think
me,
you can
TJ.
always play anyone.
I don't even know if that's Chief catching strays. You're just bluntly saying it to his face, man. Anyway, we got about 10 minutes till kickoff. I'm going to start in the Discord over here for some questions.
If you want to crush through Discord, I can get through the YouTube ones after.
Cool. Let's do that. And Chief, I'll fire the first one over to you. A DK single entry, a 4-2 Dallas Detroit stack with Montgomery and Tolbert, or a 3-1 with Calvin Ridley and Bucky Irving. So it's 4-2.
Let's go 4-2.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. If you're in on that game, you're in on that game. And you know, Montgomery.
Yeah. Everybody's playing pieces of that game, so just load up, play the entire.
Yeah,
one.
I mean, if you got Dak, a running back, you know, either Montgomery or Gibbs, and 3 receiver pieces, like, I mean, if that game pops off, you're looking good.
Yeah, and Jameson Williams catches that bomb, right? Event, maybe. We'll see. I don't know. Quite possibly. FanDuel single entry, TJ. I guess these are 3 questions. AJ Brown or Stephon Diggs?
AJ Brown.
Austin Eckler or Antonio Gibson?
Antonio Gibson.
Chase or Lamb?
Chase.
Interesting little Sunday night game for fantasy purposes, by the way. A little Tyrone Tracy, some Darius Slayton stepping up, and of course,
I didn't mention that, but I meant to mention that the Slayton that Giants game on FanDuel. I do think Slayton is viable at 5,900.
I love a Daniel Jones, Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jamar Chase team.
Slayton had over 70% of the air yard share last week, so and he has rapport with Daniel Jones. They're certainly not strangers, so I do like Slayton as well. FanDuel Cash, Chief. Can you rank these 3 guys for FanDuel Cash? AJ Brown, Chris Godwin, and Stephon Diggs.
Godwin, Diggs, Brown.
Okay, Joseph in the Discord asked about Houston defense. It sounds like they are well in the pool as well. FanDuel Cash question for TJ. I'll throw it over to you. Would you rather have Chris Godwin and the Giants defense or Terry McLaurin and Tampa Bay's defense?
McLaurin and Tampa Bay.
Okay, ladies and gents, if you have any more QQs, throw them in the Discord, and I'll throw it over to you, TJ, if you have some YouTube questions lined up.
All right, let's do it. We got lots of them in there today. We'll go fairly lightning round-ish because we only got 6 minutes left till lock. Hurts or Lamar, straight up fantasy points. Who do you like, Luuch?
I like Lamar.
Me too. Cash game today. Pick 2, Chief. Barkley, Kamara, and Pollard.
I mean, man, I'm not thrilled about all those guys for cash. I think Kamara's projecting the best. So give me Kamara and give me Pollard just for cash. I think that's the right call for cash.
Yeah, and I think a lot depends too who you'd be substituting. Because like if your options are just straight up Barkley or Pollard, obviously it's Barkley. But if going down to Pollard helps you get up at receiver to St. Brown, something like that, then it definitely becomes a lot more interesting. Perfect question for you, Luuch. Who do you like better, Hopkins or Ridley?
Oh man, it's typically I'd like to say D-Hop shredding that cover 3 that the Colts run, but I don't know what his snap share is going to be. I think maybe Levis and Ridley hit a bomb coming out of the bye week. I got one from Raj, excuse me, in the Discord. Would you rather go for DKGPP, TJ, CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Polk, or Jalen Tolbert and Marvin Harrison?
Tolbert and Harrison by a fairly wide margin for me on that one. DKGPP Chief, Mark Andrews and Jahmyr Gibbs, or Jake Ferguson and David Montgomery?
Ferguson, Montgomery.
Yeah.
I have one Mark Andrews share. I have one. This is the 1%. The 1% 3 catch for 2 touchdown game is coming at some point.
Yeah, no, I actually do too, but I think the Ferguson Montgomery pairing is a pretty great skinny stack. This one's for me specifically, Shaheed or Mooney. If Rattler's my QB, it's Shaheed. If it's anybody else, it's Mooney by a fairly wide margin for me today. Cleveland Picker asked us to rank the 5K backs on FanDuel and DraftKings. I said if you guys heavily disagree on something, chime in. I said Bucky on DraftKings, Bucky 1, Antonio Gibson 2, Austin Eckler 3, but all 3 of them are great. On FanDuel, I said Bucky Irving 1, Tyrone Tracy 2, Austin Eckler 3, and Antonio Gibson a distant 4, where there's not point per reception over there.
Yeah, I like Eckler today quite a bit.
I mean, I'm probably second with Eckler on DraftKings, but I'm playing all of them, so it doesn't matter.
Good list though, TJ. I like it.
On FanDuel, Chief, Eckler or Tyrone Tracy?
I'm still going Eckler here. Maybe I'm biased, but I just feel like in a game where they're going to have to keep up, Eckler gets going in this passing game, and he's going to go nuts.
Pickens or Amari Cooper on FanDuel, Luuch?
Yeah, we didn't mention Pickens, and squeaky wheel week maybe, but I'm hoping that Amari Cooper can just, for the love of God, Deshaun, can you just throw the ball remotely close to him? I'll go with Cooper by a nose.
It's Pickens for me, but I don't like either of them. I'm only playing one Pickens, and it's with a field stack. Do you have any Xavier Hutchinson at 3,300, Chief?
I don't.
I got him in one of 40
I'm not
lineups.
saying don't play him. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's viable if you really need the 3,300. FanDuel Cash Luuch, London and Slayton, or Deontay Johnson and Wan'Dale Robinson?
Give me London and Slayton.
Yeah, on FanDuel where there's no point per reception, I agree. I think that is the play there. Full point PPR, who do you like best, Chief? Bucky Irving, Garrett Wilson, or J.K. Dobbins?
This lightning round is a slow-moving storm.
I'm still going Bucky. Sorry, Bucky's just he's got too much work coming his way.
Ferguson or McConkey in flex on DraftKings, Luuch? It is a Dallas stack.
Then let's go Ferguson in that case.
All right. 3v3, Chief. But I'm just going to, because I already read it, I'm just going to say Juice 15. It's the Tucker Otten Colts side by a very, very wide margin. DK Cash, Chief, Lamb and Trey Tucker, or Drake London and Deontay Johnson?
London Deontay for me.
FanDuel Cash, TJ from the Discord, Dak or Burrow on FanDuel?
Dak. Philadelphia defense, sure. Any love for Laporta? No. I think all the other 5 to 6K tight ends are better today. What about a 4-man stack? Depends on the 4-man stack, but I think if it's a non-running QB, somebody like Dak today, 4-man stack, very viable. What about Tim Patrick? Don't play Tim Patrick. Luuch, what do you think about Derrick Henry's ownership today? We're projecting him for 7%. The Blitz is projecting him for 10. Projected ownership is never that high because on a point per reception site like DraftKings, he never projects that well, but the ceiling is obviously sky high. Where do you think his ownership comes in?
Depending on what tournament you're in, if you're playing single entry like the power sweep or something, I think he comes in between 15 and 20-ish, something like that.
Rob Collins needs a $3,900 receiver in single entry. He's running a Dallas stack. You use Turpin for that spot. Absolutely. Matt Smith asks, Chief, Downs and Colts defense or McConkey and Pittsburgh defense?
Give me Downs. I just think he's got more upside.
All right. Laporta or Jameson Williams, DK GPP. That is Jameson Williams. Rattler on FanDuel, any good? No, I wouldn't play Rattler on FanDuel. I would just rather go Daniel Jones for a little bit more expensive. 1 minute left to lock. Get your lineups in. Thoughts on Brandon Johnson for Pittsburgh receiver? No Brandon Johnson today. Kyler versus Love looks good. Yes, it does. DK GPP, the last question, Chief. Derrick Henry, Jalen Tolbert, and Noah Brown, or Saquon Barkley, Kevontae Turpin, and Jerry Jeudy?
Henry, Tolbert, Brown.
And that is lock. We got one more, but I believe this one is afternoon games. Hunter Lupke or Kamani Vidal, Luuch?
No.
I'm assume this. I don't. If it's DFS, the answer is no. Don't play either of them. But assume this is a 14-man season-long league.
No, still no. I'm just kidding. I don't know. Jeez, my best ball shares wanted to be Vidal, but I'm not sure.
If I had to guess,
I'd say Lupke would be the higher floor option. Vidal, I would say, has a much higher ceiling. Something happens to Dobbins, which it's Dobbins, it's very possible. But also if he gets some run in the passing work, or if Denver gets up on them, he could all of a sudden have a much higher ceiling if he gets involved, because he's a much more dynamic player. Luki, you're pretty much guaranteed he's going to get 1 to 2 receptions, maybe a red zone touch, and that's about it. And so I would go with Luki's probably gives you a higher floor, but Vidal, much, much higher ceiling. So I would probably go there. Bridgeline says no AJ Brown. AJ Brown is a very good contrarian tournament play today. Nobody's really going to be on him. But that'll do it. That's lock. And I'm not hosting, so Luuch, take it away.
Right. Yeah. Oh, so the afternoon is a little 4-gamer. I wanted some more context there. Yeah, I mean, wow, Vidal would be interesting, but there are a ton of options at running back. So, tread carefully, I suppose. We'll see. Got any hot takes, boys, for today? I mean, I'm sure I know we're full of them. I know we're full of them here. But I feel like Spencer Rattler is going to come out of
Rattler double stack is going to be winning $1 million today.
Wow. That wouldn't be good for me, but it'd be good for you because I don't have any Spencer Rattler.
I'll fly you out to come visit, or I'll fly out to come visit you if I win the $1 million.
Well, you'd be flying down because you're like on the other side of the globe.
Yeah, right? Out. I said way up there. Out.
Out. I missed one in the Discord, Chief. For you, I'm really sorry. QQ from Falcons fan 07 for Chief. How bad do the Panthers lose today? ?
Division game. I'll say no more than a touchdown.
That's fair. Guess that's it. Do we got anything else before we get out of here?
No, sir.
Negative.
Smash the like button. Everybody's still here. Smash the like button. We see there's over 1,000 of you watching. Help us out. Hit the like button. Let's get up over 200 before we get out of here.
Yeah, we appreciate all of you for hanging out with us. Tune in for food for thought. Now that we have some video, we have some great guests coming on that show all year. Tomorrow's show, this is going to be a crazy slate, so I'm really looking forward to tomorrow's show with my guy here, Chief Justice 06. But without further ado, let's go watch some football. Can I get a go Yankees? If not, it's fine. I totally understand. Enjoy the league championship series, and wherever producer Steve is out there, maybe we'll get a Subway series. But for Chief, TJ, and the rest of the crew here at RG, I'm TheLuuch. Good luck today, everybody.